Yeah, Kai knows how this works. Like, I've pressed the record button so many times early, and then like, Callum and Kai are like, no, we want to discuss something.
Yeah,
no,
dude,
we're doing it live.
You literally keep wasting our good stories, and then we
I'm
only
not
had
gonna
like
kill it
lame
yet.
stuff left. Yeah.
I'll wait until it comes up.
You already pressed the recording button. So we live on air, guys.
Say hello to everybody.
Well,
I
hello,
still need to open
everybody.
the show notes.
There is one question you need answered. Is can I swear on here, or do you want to keep it PG?
Of course. It's it's not that you can't. It's required. It's mandatory.
Oh, okay.
It's
Perfect.
a thing. Like, we are a podcast officially registered in Germany, and if you wanna be on the air here, you need to swear at least like 4 times on the hour.
We are in the swear category.
And the funny thing is, a lot of people don't believe this. In Germany, you need a streaming license, and you also need a podcast license, and we got neither of those.
That is the most German thing I've ever heard.
It's so fucking German that most people ignore it. I think that only applies to actually, it doesn't apply to only a few of our states, but then once we got the first like really big German Twitch streamers, they actually moved away from the country. I think one of them moved to Luxembourg just to continue the streaming career, because they're like, I'm not getting like any stupid streaming license. It's just anyway, very German thing.
I would be offended if someone maybe gets streaming license. I would actually just rather leave the country. I think he's doing it right.
Yeah, I mean, Germany has laws on how you can brew your beer based on what city you live in. Like,
it's actually just like, generally speaking, the fucking Reinheitsgebot. It means like you are only allowed to use. Kai, help me out. I don't drink beer.
Dude,
water.
Do look like a
but like a Berliner Weiss, you can only brew in Berlin.
I mean, okay, that one makes a little more sense. If you don't have laws like that, you get Budweiser as your national beer, so that's not exactly the best outcome.
Yeah, but I think that's more about like the European Union and like how we have these regional distinctions. But yeah, it's actually true, because Munich has, I want to say, 7 breweries, and the rule is that if you are a Munich brewery, you get to have a big beer hall at the Oktoberfest. But now there's an 8th brewery, I think it's the 8th, the Giesinger Bräu, and they also want to be a Munich brewery. And then they, like, because there was not a new brewery in hundreds of years, I guess, they made up a new law kinda, that says it's only Munich water if it's coming from a deep well inside the city borders of Munich. And then those guys actually collected like a Kickstarter or something, because apparently building like a well is insanely expensive, like a really deep one. And they managed to do it, and now they are also officially. Anyway, we're getting really
it's hilarious how we've been talking about brewing. It's not deck building. Like, we're actually talking about the beer brewing thing. Like, I don't know what podcast this is, but it's definitely not a professional one.
I was saying, beer and Eternal Magic's a perfect combo. If you ever read an old school tournament report, that's what they do most of the time.
Oh yeah.
Hello and welcome to Everyday Brewing 181, your favorite, most separately named bi-weekly legacy podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our brand new Patreon, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
If you want to support the running of the show directly, you can support us on patreon.com/everydayturn. And by the way, I should introduce whom we got on the show. We got Max Gilmore, the winner of North American Vintage Championships. And, of course, we also got Kelvin Wallace, the winner of the North American Legacy Championships. Guys, thank you for coming on the show. We'll be right back as soon as Max has finished whatever he needs to do right now. In the meantime, and Max already contributed to this podcast without even mentioning it, this is your bi-weekly Legacy podcast, right? So we release every other week, kinda. But this week, we have 2 releases in 1 week, so now we're actually using the second meaning of bi-weekly.
Good, double the value. Quattro the value, no?
Yeah, I think it goes like to the power of 2 or something, right? That's how it works.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, yeah, guys, seriously. Last night, do American companies do Christmas parties for their employees?
Oh, yeah, they do Christmas parties. Otherwise, the employees would unionize. So that's like the one thing they do. That's how they keep them happy.
Is that like a pizza party?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's a little thank you for the road before they break for Christmas.
Yeah, our Christmas party last night went a little harder. I still only just recovering. I really need you guys to carry the show. As well, I guess Kai is at least here. I was gonna say Callum is not here, so whom are we gonna make fun of while actually knowing the most about the state of the format? But Callum is actually on a tour, on a musical tour all around Germany. And by that, I mean only one city, I think, in northern Bavaria, before going to Eternal Weekend. I guess 1 week from now, kind of. So, really looking forward to that. I was,
Man, dude,
I was going to ask you, are you going to Eternal Weekend Europe as well? But maybe you actually want to go now. I don't know.
No, I don't think I can this year. But my little brother's graduating, so that's my excuse. But otherwise, I got a little bit of money going. I could just book a flight, little DJ, and try to run it back. Try to get two. But probably not in the cards for this year. But I'm thinking about doing 2 or 3 Eternal Weekends the following year.
Oh my goodness! I think like this year, like I think you're doing like the perfect call. Like, yeah, if you're doing great, you should probably stop at some point. It's the same. Like it's in poker the same, right? Like just stop when it's good and just don't look back. Because if you go like 0-5 in the next Eternal Weekend main event, like that will haunt you for ages.
I've been talking a lot of trash on Twitter, so it definitely look bad if I wasn't able to, if I 0-5 the next event.
I will never forget that when I won Bazaar of Moxon the next year, I want to say 0-2, 0-3 drop in the main event or something, or 1-3 drop in the main event, and then Ole Rade came over to me and was like, "What happened, dude?" And I was like, "Oh god, is this gonna be every event I drop from now, every time in the future?" And so I was like, it just happens, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Anyway, Max, we already introduced you as the future. I don't know what's your favorite political position? Dictator of the American United States, something like that.
For guy behind the scenes? I don't know.
Guy behind. But I think you have to do something else for that. Anyway, so as you were gone, we introduced you. But first of all, very quick shoutouts. Kai, you wrote down some shoutouts. You want to read them out here?
So like as soon as I saw the final results and the first couple of like photos from Card Kingdom. Like I immediately saw Kelvin wearing that Legacy of the North parka, and like I'm wearing mine too right now. And like I met those guys from, I think they're from Toronto.
Yeah,
I'm not right. Yeah.
I love that proper pronunciation on the word, by the way.
From Toronto. So
Toronto.
the guys from Toronto, they came all the way to the Buffalo Chicken Dip in Columbus, which is like, I think pretty far away, but they came there with like the most badass car.
Snowplow.
Yeah, dude, like
they
it was
rode
like
on a moose, on a magical moose.
It was like a monster truck, seriously. Like I've never seen a car like that. And they had like the Legacy of the North flags on the side, you know, left and right, and like it was like a black vehicle with like black flags, and it was like so badass. And I think Jim, I think he's called like Jim Monolith on Facebook.
Jim Monolith, that's his moniker. Real name James, goes by Jim. Yeah, Jim Monolith.
Okay, dude,
Eternal witness tier supporter Jim Monolith. By the way.
Dude, fucking CEO of Legacy of the North. They came over and like, you know, I had a little bit of a talk at them during the event, and I gotta say, like, they're probably like one of the coolest Legacy gangs I've ever met so far. And it was just like so hilarious to see you, Kelvin. You are not from Toronto, right?
I'm not from Toronto. I'm from Seattle, but I did attend the University of Toronto. So
shit.
I was there for about 5 years and got really close to a lot of those guys once they started the league.
Does that mean you're not Canadian?
I'm not. I'm only Canadian on paper to get cheap tuition. My mom was Canadian.
That's how Kai like became a Catholic to get into his school.
Yeah.
Episode 162, I want to say.
Yeah, not worth listening. But anyway, yeah, like I felt so connected when I saw that. I was like, dude, it's a small world, and it's one of the coolest Legacy gangs again. So
yeah,
shout out to the guys, like shout out to Jim and everyone else. I don't know how big the Legacy of the North crew is, but I think they're fairly large.
Their Facebook group has 500 members. Their group photo at Eternal Weekend had 60 people in the photo.
Dude, that's
pretty good.
Insane. That's insane, dude.
It's hard to get a group photo, so getting 60 people means they probably had 100 people who said yes.
I know.
Just like
I unfortunately missed it. I kind of bailed pretty quick after Legacy Day 1 to get food and missed the photo. I was in the one last year, though. The one previous year was only 12 people, so we're truly growing.
Oh, shit.
So next year it's going to be 300?
300. That's the plan. If it's any less, then Jim Monolith will be very disappointed.
The thing is, if Legacy of the North, not sponsored, hashtag, actually has a cool logo, That sounds kind of cool. I think I could see buying merchandise or something of that.
Oh yeah, it's like the Grim Monolith. Oh no, it was like, by the way, like Jim also told me that he only plays Legacy decks with Grim Monolith in it. I was like, dude, there are not many decks with Grim Monolith. Like there's one right now, but like I don't know, like back in the day there weren't many decks, I think.
Kai, doesn't your last name mean like bridge or something in Japanese?
Yeah.
So from now on, you're only supposed to play decks with bridges in them.
Oh,
like
like
planar bridge, ensnaring bridge.
Planar bridge, dude, easy. Yeah, I totally look like an ensnaring bridge player.
Oh, the game bridge. Yeah, actually, that's actually you play the 2-2, right?
Yeah.
I've never played that. I think Mark-Eric Vogt tried to excite me for it for a while because I think it's kind of challenging. But anyway, we were already getting dragged way off topic at the 11-minute mark. So once again, guys, thank you so much for joining. In the past, we often got like a winner of a Vintage Champs, maybe a winner of a Legacy Champs. But I want to say this is the first time we're actually getting both guys at the same time. For as weird as that sounds, I guess.
It's not weird.
That's a nice 2-for-1, yeah.
It's only weird if you make it weird, right? Okay, here we go. So thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to speaking to you basically about you guys, a very short history of your stint in the format or whatever you want to call that. And then we want to focus on the vintage as well as the legacy portions of both the tournament. And yeah, I guess here we go right away. So according to our show notes, we're going to start with the vintage champs. So Max, tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in the format, what you're up to right now, and if you could... No, that's actually really weird. I tried to come back... Oh, yeah, I got a really good question. If you were a vegetable, which kind of vegetable would you be and why?
That's a very vintage question. Okay, great. Yeah. So I have been playing Vintage for about as long as I've been playing Magic Online, because people always think of Vintage as this super inaccessible format, which for non-proxy paper events, which is exactly, once a year at Eternal Weekend, outside of that, Vintage is extremely accessible. Online, it's less expensive to play Vintage than it is to play Legacy. In person, any Vintage event is proxy friendly at the very least for Power and like Time Vault and stuff like that in bazaars and workshops. So it's not actually that inaccessible to play Vintage, with the one exception of Eternal Weekend. And so I actually went into this Eternal Weekend playing, a good amount of online Vintage. I like to play the challenges whenever I can. I like to play leagues. I enjoy kind of the breadth of the format. Vintage Doomsday is probably my favorite deck, but I also really love Esper Luris for the same reasons I love Esper Stoneblade and Legacy and stuff like that. I just love fair grinding blue decks.
To interrupt you there, by the way, you mentioned Doomsday, Vintage Doomsday. You also played a lot of Legacy Doomsday, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I have a couple types.
Yeah, I very much remember a couple of years ago you tweeted about this where you were like, you know what, I'm just gonna learn Legacy Doomsday now because that deck is cool and I wanna be good with it. And I was like, whoa, that could be me right now if I was more motivated.
Yeah, that did happen. This was during I'd like to call Oko Hell, where we were just in the Snowco land and just having absolutely zero fun. And my options were basically stop playing Magic because it was just not fun to play fair against that, or just learn how to play Doomsday. And so I decided to learn how to play Doomsday.
Okay, well, that's kind of like a disappointing answer, because like I thought that you started Doomsday because you thought Doomsday is a cool deck, but like it sounded more like an emergency exit.
Is. Well, no, it is. It's because I had always wanted to play it, but the learning curve and like the air around Doomsday is that it's so hard and like you'll make so many mistakes and always like there's always a way for you to win the game, but you'll like got to figure out that pile, and it's like, oh, that seems really hard compared to just playing Magic and attacking for 20. So I wanted to, it was basically one of those things like, okay, I'm finally going to bite the bullet. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to take my losses and accept that I'm going to lose for a bit, but I'll eventually learn how to play Doomsday. And so that's what I did.
Wait, so what happened first? Like, did you play Vintage first in Legacy or in Vintage?
I played Legacy Doomsday first, and then I eventually moved over into Vintage Doomsday. Vintage Doomsday is a lot easier after you resolve Doomsday, but a lot harder before you do.
Yeah,
that's
totally
what Kai
agree.
often says,
Totally agree. It's,
you got stuff like Gush and everything, right? It's kind of crazy, and Ancestral Recall and everything.
Yeah, Gush, Ancestral Recall, Black Lotus, those help a lot for making a very straightforward, easy Doomsday pile that you don't have that in Legacy. You have Lions of Diamond and Brainstorm and all these relatively bad cards compared to this.
Should
yeah,
we
dude.
unban Gush in Legacy? That would be something, right?
Ooh, no.
Only as a one-off and only for Doomsday. No one else is allowed to play it.
Gush and Psychic Frog is kind of a high if you've never.
Oh my goodness, dude! Don't get me tempted, dude, like that.
Gush and Psychic Frog. That actually reminds me of Psychig Talk back with Fact or Fiction.
I mean, that is literally Psycho Talk, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're right.
And then like random cutting wishes and stuff. Oh.
So yeah, that's something you can do in Vintage right now. Gush is restricted, but you can play Gush in your Psychic Frog tempo deck.
It kind of feels like Vintage is somewhat like the Berlin of Magic. Like there's lots of illegal, messed up, weird stuff going on, but you can do that if you go to that one place, in this case Vintage. And everybody else is like, no, this is way too messed up. We don't like bother with this. But if you are really into this, there's a place for that, and that place is called Vintage or Berlin.
Yeah, dude. So, I like Vintage is a pretty disgusting format, like in a good way. Like, but a lot of nasty things happen.
Yeah, it's a very high-powered format, but the power kind of balances itself out because it's kind of like if you imagine like superheroes battling each other as opposed to like superheroes like beating up regular people.
Dude, I would watch that. That's actually something I would watch.
They do have some TV shows that do that. But anyway, the point being is that it's a very high-powered format, but it's actually, I think, quite balanced. The Esper Luris deck or the Luris decks are maybe a little bit better than the other decks, but even among those decks, you kind of have to pick and choose what matchups you're going to try to be favored against and what you lose ground against. And so the meta can kind of self-correct, if you will. So right now, Luris is, I think, probably the best thing to be doing. But even if like no new cards are printed, I think in 3 months that probably would not be the case.
Yeah, the thing is, when I look at these deck lists right now and everything, I gotta admit, I've not been that. I love Vintage. I very much love Vintage, but I haven't really been into it for quite a while. Haven't really been following it all that much. So I'm even more happy that we got you on. But everything I see lately is either some kind of like Luris variation or like apparently all these shop stacks, they're like multicolored shops now, which people used to call like kind of like the Mona Lisa of shop stacks, but now it's like PO shops or jewel shops, which I want to say it's almost one of the most broken things I've ever seen in Vintage.
It's basically just the Vintage version of the Mystic Forge deck.
Yeah.
So Vintage has kind of a parallel, like among the top decks, you can pretty quickly draw parallels. I'll do it real quick if you want. So the Esper Luris like decks are basically just like blue-black tempo, but the Vintage version. Tinker Breach decks are maybe the one with the weakest parallel, but when Underworld Breach was legal, it's, like that. Jewel is basically just, if Mystic Forge played blue so that you could have Force of Will and the bounce spells and stuff like that. Oath of Druids is just like Sneak and Show. Dredge is Dredge. Hollowvine or Countervine is like a bizarre deck that plays like bizarre Baghdad deck that plays like plays Hollow One, Vengevine. It plays the Root Wallas, the 8 of them, and it plays 4 Squeeze and 4 Master of Death, like recur them from your graveyard. So your Bizarre actually becomes a card advantage spell because you recoup those cards from your graveyard on your upkeep. You draw 2, discard 3. You discard those cards or Vengevines or whatever, and or like Root Wallas and pay 0 for them. And so you're basically
it's kind of like a tempo
back it up with 4 wasteland or 4 wastelands to strip mine, so 5 wastelands, and then 12 counter spells. Like 4 Force of Will, 4 Force of Negation, and 4 Mindbreak Trap. And so you're basically, that's the Delver deck of the format.
I played it like a couple of years ago, and you didn't really pay mana for anything. It almost felt like you play, I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon or however that works.
But it's not Dredge in the same way that, like, if you're playing Dredge and your opponent opens up on Leyline of the Void, you're like, oh no, I can no longer function. If you're playing Countervine and your opponent opens up on Leyline of the Void, you're like, okay, well, I'm hamstrung a bit because my Bizarre doesn't make card advantage, but you're still functioning.
Yeah, but if your opponent opens on Vexing Bauble, you're just dead in the water and have to concede.
Yes. So that deck was basically knocked out of existence while Vexing Bauble was unrestricted, and it hasn't quite come back to life at all yet. I think that it could be more alive than it is right now. It's also not particularly good against Orcish Bowmaster because you do actually draw the cards with Bizarre. But anyway, yeah, that deck exists. And then Doomsday is Doomsday. Not much to say there. That's the parallel. And then Mono White Initiative is basically, that same Mono White Initiative list that we had before it got banned, except it's even faster because you get to play the artifact mana that Vintage offers.
So now I'm curious, is there any, because that used to be a thing, is there any budget deck still around? Best unpowered or something?
Mono Red Stompy is, I think, the best budget deck. You play Null Rods and Blood Moons, and you just try to prevent your opponent from functioning. And because you're playing like Null Rod Blood Moon with this like City of Traders Spirit Guide Chrome Mox build, you don't really need power. You just lock your opponent out of functioning.
I'm looking at the deck lists. Okay, this guy also plays power.
There were a couple of cool decks. I think it was one of the win-in-ins, I think, in Vintage, when Dave Kaplan on Espalurus played against his opponent. He was on a Bug deck, but it was a Bug completely unpowered. No Ancestral, Time Walk, Moxen. And they were like, I don't know, like 6-1 or something. I don't know the record, but it was actually pretty insane.
They were 7-1 playing for their win-in, that's right.
Probably Ben
and they ended up
Hewitt
7-2
in 17th place. I don't see any power in there.
Yep, that's correct. And yeah, it was a really cool deck. So yeah, Bug Midrange is a viable deck in Vintage. It's just a little bit bigger than the Blue-Black Tempo deck. It plays like Deathrite Shaman into 3-drops like Leovold and stuff like that. It also plays Collector Oofs to try to lock your opponent out. And because it leverages Deathrite Shaman so well, and there's so many like different color pips, the Moxen are obviously good in there, but Black Lotus is almost closer to a Lotus Petal a lot of the time when you're playing that deck. And so you can play that thing unpowered pretty reasonably. Like obviously you don't get your Ancestral Recalls and Time Walks, but you can still play like Dig Through Time Treasure Cruise. And,
pretty much the same, right?
Openings for Life from the Loam and stuff like that my opponent was able, or I'm sorry, not my opponent, Dave's opponent was able to play. And so, yeah, it's a really cool list. And I really like how he did that. And it was a great way to leverage it. So massive props there to get 17th place on Unpowered. Like that is awesome. But yeah, Powered Bug is also a completely legitimate deck.
Dude, I loved Powered Bug, like back from 10 years ago. That's something I played.
It was my round 5 opponent was playing Bug.
Mm-hmm.
It's a solid deck. Montolio on Magic Online, Andy Marketon, it's his deck of choice these days, and he's a vintage diehard.
Yeah,
Montolio is famous enough that even I know him.
Yeah, noted shops player.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and of course there's also aggro shops like Ravager shops exists, but it's kind of been power crept out of the format a little bit. These days, it goes for playing Golos because then you can Golos get Caracas back your Golos and get more stuff that way.
It's kind of funny how that's actually a thing in Vintage, right? Because people think of Vintage as like completely, utterly broken, but sometimes Vintage, everything just like neutralizes itself, and then you have that kind of engine that actually takes away the game.
I mean, because Golos is a 2-drop. You get your Workshop and your Ancient 2, and you cast it on 2.
Exactly. It's funny. Vintage, maybe 20% of games, maybe a little less, are like getting vintaged or vintaging someone, like where you resolve an ancestral and like run away with your game and your opponent never has a chance, like that sort of thing. But I think the other 80% of games are just this like really cool grindy game where both of you are able to like posture and interact and stop your opponent from resolving their broken stuff while you're trying to like create windows to push your broken stuff through. And so it's this really cool little dance you have to do with like, it's like sword fighting where you don't want to get hit, right? But it's really dramatic until you do.
It's funny when you mentioned that sometimes you just neutralize yourself and you try to dodge and what I want to say is I played my first Vintage tournament in 2009, I want to say. And back then, creatures were a lot worse, right? I played Oath in my very first tournament, and I think my creature of choice was Hellkite Overlord, and some people played a Chroma. So that's the kind of power level on creatures we had, and that also like showed in like the normal creatures that we attacked with. Like we played Solemn, Simulacrum, and all that kind of stuff. And I even particularly remember Sage of Apatir, which obviously nobody's gonna remember, even was a thing because there was like is it Ninja of the Deep Hours, the one that has ninjutsu that draws your cards? So people wanted like a blue 1-drop, and turns that comes into playability. So some people played like Sage of Apatir. That's just like, in some ways, I still believe that's on a much higher power level. Of course, Vintage still operates on like where you use creatures that are good, but sometimes just like not good enough for other formats. But because they fit or they scratch a particular itch for what exactly that kind of vintage deck wants, you see them, and it's becoming less of a thing, but it still is there, kinda, and that's what I love about vintage.
Yeah, these days Oath just plays Atraxa, which is a little bit less
boring.
exciting.
But actually, as it turns
there's a
out,
version. Actually,
great.
wait, I have good news. There is a version of Oath which I don't personally think is as good, but it plays Pyroglyph, because as you're building your deck, you get this giant Pyroglyph, and Pyroglyphs trigger each other, so you can just flip a couple Pyroglyphs. They're also not too hard to cast from hand, so they're relatively immune to Containment Priests and stuff like that way. So it's a harder deck to hate out, but yeah, it's a Pyroglyph Oath deck.
Okay, I can get behind that. It's just like, okay, what's the best creature we can find? Actually, Pyroglyph is legit. I played it in Legacy, in a couple of leagues online, and that card carries a lot of weight. I think I played it in Painter the other week, and yeah, I can see how that might sometimes actually be better than Atraxa. Very quick reference to, I think you played against Oath in the semifinals, right?
I did, yes.
I watched that. Because, okay, I guess quick, we are doing this all out of order. I was just in Egypt to do my first big kitesurfing course, and it was a lot of fun. But every day, I come back to the hotel, I fall into my bed, I need to recover for an hour, and that's when I open my iPad and just randomly watch something. And there was Max's semifinals against David Tao on Oath, and apparently David got an Atraxa, and then couldn't have gotten another Atraxa, but it didn't really work out that way. And I don't know if you ever watched it back with commentary, but commentators were like, okay, yeah, David is 80% to win here, and then 2 turns later, yeah, I still believe David is 60% to win here, and then a couple of turns later are like, ooh, we don't think David is going to win anymore. Atraxa just didn't cut it.
Did he just cut the Guy's Blessing?
Yeah, so he cut Guy's Blessing in the matchup, which makes sense to me. So a lot of people are really confused about it. So just to give a little bit of background. So Gaia's Blessing is a flex slot in Oath decks. What it does is as you mill your Oath deck, those cards, before you hit your creature, those cards stay in the graveyard normally. But what Gaia's Blessing does is, if it gets milled, it shuffles Emrakul Claws of it shuffles your graveyard back into your library. And so you're able to not risk milling yourself out as you kind of grind through your deck against whatever. And so David has that in his main deck. And the idea here is that you're just this very consistent Oath deck game one. You're not going to risk, milling out or losing a game one that you would otherwise win. And then when you're sideboarding, your opponent's going to bring in a bunch of cards that make Oath of Druids or whatever not function, right? I'm bringing in Containment Priest and stuff like that. And so when you're choosing what to cut in order to bring in the cards to answer my hate, like my Containment Priests and my Caracas and stuff, you have to cut something, right? It's not free. And so the card that you want to cut, it's not your Force of Wills, it's not your Moxen, it's not your Okos. It's going to be the card that once your deck is fully functioning and your Oath is working, that makes it a bit more consistent, right? And so because if you're, under a Containment Priest, Gaia's Blessing is doing you no favors. And so he cut it in post board because of that. And that makes sense. It's making sure the game one works, and then you can cut it post board. People were confused, but I agree with his decision to cut it. It just didn't work out in his favor that time.
Yeah. I mean, I can see that. The only thing that made it awkward, I guess, in that game was that you had Caracas, and he only really has a Strip Mine to deal with that.
Strip Mine and 2 Besages.
Yeah. I've lost a lot of games playing Oath where I just mill all my answers to Caracas, and I just feel real bad. It's sometimes you just get unlucky.
Yeah, it's maybe 10% of games that happens, but that's still 10% of games. If you're oathing 4 or 5 times a match, that's once every 2 matches. It's not super rare, but it is somewhat rare to have that happen, but it's not some crazy anomaly either.
Yeah, I guess you have to compromise in some way if you want to build a tournament winning vintage deck. If you want to cover all your bases, I always say that's the person who goes 6-2 and is happy that they missed top 8 by breakers or something. It's just hey, but I played a consistent deck. It's yeah, cool.
Yeah, so,
try to win the tournament rather.
Yeah, you have to assume calculated risks, and I think that cutting the Gaia's Blessing post board in order to fit his Lightning Bolt and his utter insignificance, which is a card I had to look up Oracle text on while reviewing his deck list. Where I think that's the right decision, to be honest.
Cool. Cool. So, Max, when you came into this, by the way, we also mentioned, we haven't mentioned yet, you also co-run a website, right? MinMaxBlog.
I do, yeah.
.com?
Minmaxblog.com, but I'm a bit less active there these days. What I do is I make a lot of YouTube content. I record weekly legacy challenges. Usually the Saturday night 8 p.m. one for me is after my kids go down to bed, and I can just kind of buckle in and play a challenge and commentate my way through it, and then I upload it. And so, yeah, I put these up, and they're quite competitive events, and I play decks that I think are going to do well and that I can do well with. I do try to play like some variety, but I'm not like playing goofy off the wall decks either. I'm playing good decks, and I'm playing them to the best of my ability to win. And so that's on my YouTube channel at Max Torsion MTG. So that's really where most of my content creation goes these days.
Mm-hmm. And when you came into Eternal Weekend, I assume you played Vintage and Legacy. Was there any format you focused more on, like very particularly targeting the Vintage champs, or did you devote similar amounts of times to both?
Well, so a little bit embarrassing. So I focused the vast majority of my time on learning and building Legacy Nadu, like Nadu Zenith, because I thought that deck was well positioned against the blue-black decks like blue-black Tempo and Froginator and stuff like that. And there wasn't really a super stock list of that. Decks were all over the place. And so I was trying really hard to come up with a version of that I felt like could still beat those decks, but then was good enough against Eldrazi and good enough against Mystic Forge. And I almost got there, but then I was like, I just didn't feel comfortable playing it. I just felt like really scared the whole time. So I put like, definitely like, I'm in a ballpark 100 hours of work into that deck.
Wow.
And then I ended up on Thursday when I got into Pittsburgh buying the cards for Sneak and Show.
Dude, but like a long time ago, you were a Sneak and Show player, right?
No, I have never, before this weekend or this past weekend, I had never played Sneak and Show in paper.
How could you like pick up such a complicated deck just like out of the blue?
I know. Show and tell is the hardest part of the deck. There's a ton of cards that you can put. Well, I don't remember exactly what. Dude,
I miss Cherry Me. By the way.
I miss Cherry too. But yeah, it was funny because I just figured that I wanted. Sneak and Show is like popping up again in the challenges and stuff, and like doing quite well. And so I wanted to see what all the fuss is about. So right before Eternal Weekend, I just like threw it blind 0 reps into a showcase challenge, and I went 6-3. I made some mistakes just from literally never piloting the deck before and some unfamiliarity of what people would bring in against me. But I felt like this deck is really strong. And so I had it in my back pocket as kind of a thing I would bring. I brought my Ancient Tombs, I borrowed Jarvis' City of Traders, and then I just purchased Show and Tells and Sneak Attacks, and 1 Omniscience, 2 Atraxas, 2 more Emrakuls, and then I had the deck.
And you ended up going a glorious
8-3. I lost the last round to Dom Harvey to miss out on the crop rotation promo.
You got Yorion Reanimator?
Yeah, I got Yorion Reanimated, which is actually really funny because, so quick side tangent, my first Eternal Weekend was actually last year, and round 1 Vintage was against Dom Harvey, and I was like, okay, I see what I'm in for. And I got really lucky to beat him there. And so now I lost the last round of Legacy this year to Dom Harvey, and it's kind of like a closed loop.
Okay, I'm trying to see whether your list is somewhere here in the top. Well, it's only 128. You might be here.
I'm your 79th place.
Oh, you know that by heart. Okay. Max.
I just looked it up.
Okay.
Last night.
Max Gilmore, there you are. Sneak Show, dude. Now you forever have that deck tied to your name.
That stain on my. Yeah, exactly.
You could change your last name or something. I don't know.
It's actually really funny.
Propose it to your wife.
I surprised a lot of people by hiding the Ancient Tombs and stuff because the way I present myself and the way I dress and like my card arts and stuff, I don't look like a Sneak and Show player. I don't act like I don't look like I can bench 235 pounds, and I'm not dressed to be able to try. So you know what I mean. I look like people have told me, especially during the Miracles days, that I look like a Miracles player, and I took a little offense back then, but. It's also good.
Really? Is that like an insult?
It's like it's a backhanded compliment.
Okay, I never thought
it
about
means
it like
they could probably take my lunch money if they wanted to. But anyway, because of those things, I would just be fetching like basic Island Ponder and what have you. And my opponents would just kind of put me like, Jeskai Control is doing well. That's weird. Until I go with Ancient Tomb Show and Tell. And so, yeah, it's, I got a lot of people by surprise with that.
I remember whom you remind me of. Nicolas Cage in Con Air. You guys have the same hair, basically. Anybody listening to this, if you like agree, let us know, because I believe that you could play Nicolas Cage in a remake of Con Air.
I feel like I could play Anakin Skywalker.
It's an awkward role.
I mean, children murdering notwithstanding.
Yeah, exactly. But you also hate sand, right?
I do hate sand. It's rough and it gets everywhere. Actually, that's true. It is. It gets everywhere.
Oh, tell me about it. I just spent like 1 week in the Egyptian sand. sitting in water, trying to launch my kite. Dude, have you ever heard of something like a Russian launch?
Is that a euphemism?
No. If by any chance somebody already knows how to kite surf and they know what that is, in Germany call it Russenstart, holy fucking shit, don't ever try that. Because I did that by accident, which means launching the kite. You launched the kite in the wrong way, and then immediately after, the kite launches you instead. And I want to say I was thrown something like 10 meters forward through the air, which is like, I don't know, how many yards? Nobody knows.
30.
And yeah, don't ever try to do a Russian launch. Like my kitesurfing instructor was like, hey,
10
that's
meters
cheating.
is 11 yards, 33 feet.
That's how far you have to carry the football, right?
Yeah, just over.
Just over? Yeah, cool. Anyway, going back to Vintage. So you did pretty well in Legacy, even though you missed out on the promo. How did you feel about your deck? Is that like something you want to keep playing going forward, or was it just like a one-off thing?
I mean, I'll play it sometimes now that I own the cards. It's pretty cool. I'll just play a 4 Ancient Tomb version for like, casual Legacy. I don't need to buy City of Traders. But yeah, it was fun. I think it's quite powerful. I did not try that new Assassin's Creed Yggdrasil card. I read it and I did some quick math, and what it does is that when it ETBs, you exile all creatures from your graveyard only. Basically flavor text. Tap, exile the top 3 cards of your library. And then it has another ability, 4 mana tap. You can put a creature that you've already exiled with it onto the battlefield under your control. It gains haste. It does not have a sacrifice at end of turn clause to that, so that you keep that creature.
And how much mana is it?
3 to cast, and then 4 and tap to do that big activation, regular tap to do the searching. And so my thought about that card is that without like using any extra cantrips to sculpt, you're roughly like 60, something like 2/3 of a chance to hit one creature in 2 activations of it. So the third, like play it, activate once, next turn, activate again. That turn after, you're roughly like 2/3 to have found a creature for it.
Just like so much time to invest.
That's exactly. So I played the One Ring instead, because over that same turn window, I've drawn 6 cards and I've got a Time Walk in there. And so I know what the One Ring does, and I know exactly how to do it. I was about to playtest Yggdrasil round 1. Maybe the card is great and I'm just like underrating it, but I wasn't about to find out round 1 of Eternal Weekend.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Also, in your deck list, I noticed you have another artifact that you're playing 4 copies of in the 75. You want to talk about that one?
Why don't you tell us what it is?
I think the one I'm referring to is Vexing Bauble. I think we both were on 5 Bauble gang.
We were. Yep, that's right. So I played, one of the things I really liked about Sneak and Show is that, especially against like the tempo decks and stuff, the main weakness is that you're investing this 3 mana into this must-force spell, 4 mana into this must-force spell, and you're kind of slow. Your opponent counters you a couple times, dazes you, and then you're out of it. And so just like the Mystic Forge deck is able to leverage Vexing Bubble, you're actually able to leverage Vexing Bubble in your Sneak and Show deck, like regardless of the fact that you play Force of Wills or whatever. It's in matchups that you are more afraid of them than they are of you. You cut your bubbles, but in matchups where you are the more powerful thing to be doing, you keep them. And you can, I played 2 bubbles main, 2 side, so I could kind of be, hedge it a little bit game 1 and then either go up to 4 or down to 0 in the post-board games. And yeah, it's a very powerful card because it's a 1 mana must force, which is great. It's if you go Island, Bauble, your opponent forces, you go, okay, cool. Ancient Tomb, Show and Tell. Like, and if they enter that, you go, okay, cool. Land the One Ring. Like, it's disgusting. You're just playing must force threat until something gets through.
Yeah.
I feel like the conversation. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no! So you ever cast an Emrakul into your own bauble with Omniscience?
Yes, I did actually. It was really funny. I did do that, and
beautiful.
I was really clear. I was like, cast Emrakul into my Vexing bauble trigger, acknowledge it, but it resolves anyway. And I just like said it like that to make sure that there is no ambiguity in the game. But yeah, it did happen.
Nice.
So I feel like ever since this weekend, and I think we'll get to that in a minute once we move on to Legacy portion as well. The conversation around Legacy has very much changed to like putting Vexing Bauble in the focus. Did you guys feel the same?
Yeah, that card is busted. I think it took people a little while to realize how to best abuse it, which is why it kind of came out of nowhere as this like target on its head. But it's disgusting, and the decks that can take the most advantage of it are actually the ones that they thought like I think they designed it to kind of weaken those decks a little bit, like, your LEDs and stuff like that, have people pay mana for their spells. But really what it does is it just makes those decks able to ram through their disgusting stuff, because you can also pop the bauble when you don't want it anymore. Can you imagine if Nullrod had right?
Yes.
Imagine if Nullrod had I don't know, a triggered ability at the beginning of your end step, or at the beginning of your opponent's end step, you may sacrifice Nullrod. Like, imagine if Nullrod just had that text on it.
Dude,
that's kind of like what Vexing Bauble
could
does.
Sack your second chalice on one to draw a card.
Yeah, that's another great
sack your
analogy.
It's like, I get my land wastelanded after I resolve Trinisphere. I sack my Trinisphere. Oh, I guess we can play on. I'm never could be locked under my own card.
Yeah, it's great. And then in Vintage, I played one Vexing Bauble as well, which is why Kelvin said that we're 5 bauble gamers. We're not cheating. We played 4 in Legacy and 1 in Vintage. So the reason why that's the case is because with Luris, like, in addition to just being another way to leverage being on the play in Vintage, like, if you get your bauble down, just like a Lavinia, your opponent can't play their Moxen, and like if they're playing Countervine, they're locked out entirely. There's a lot of things that cost 0 in Vintage that, or you don't pay mana for in Vintage, that your opponent can't resolve anymore. And it leverages the play there. And then, of course, with Luris, you can just like pay 2 mana to draw a card, which is not the worst.
Yeah, so you, at the worst, you still got your draw engine down, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was also playing in Vintage, but I was like being way less fair with it. So I was playing the Underworld Breach combo deck, and I think I snuck into like 30th place. But I was just using it as particularly defense grid, and I was playing a Tinker Bolas Citadel deck, where if my opponent controlled the Vexing Bauble, my Citadel is pretty bricked. It just counters everything I cast off of it. So I would just go resolve Bauble, resolve Tinker while you can't force it, put my Citadel in play, sack my Bauble, and just start comboing off with a Citadel.
Oh, dude.
Dude,
this is beautiful. This is
entirely unfair. Where I was just like, I was like a full suite of Mox's Mana Crypt Lotus Petal deck, and it still didn't matter because I just needed to resolve my one hammer. So I was like, I'll resolve my hammer, I'll get my hate piece out of the way, and now when my hammer's in play, your forces don't matter. And it was just entirely unfair. I don't know who thought that card was a good idea.
I mean, what's the flavor text of it? It's very accurate and very apt.
Yeah, it's the flavor text is something like, no one knew who designed it, but all they knew is they wanted to be nowhere near it.
Okay, I just looked it up. One sec. No one knew who invented it. No one knew its purpose. All anyone knew is that they didn't like being anywhere near it. And I think that's kind of how we all feel about the card at this point.
The thing is, like, I don't really hate the card right now, but I also haven't been playing as much lately. So, is this card like good enough that it actually joined the ban discussion that like has been kind of going on in the format for a couple of months now?
I'm definitely a noted Vexing Bauble hater, and one of like the first things I said publicly after winning the event was I came to Eternal Weekend to get this shit banned. So hopefully I get that across the finish line, and we no longer have to play against that card. But we'll see what happens on the 16th.
Yeah, Kelvin, I am in complete agreement. I just think the card adds nothing, takes away a lot. It's already been restricted in Vintage, so they're aware that the card is, something that can be removed from formats, or as much as Vintage allows things to be.
I don't know where I read this, but I read somewhere that this card was initially assumed to be designed for the elementals in Modern. So people would have like a way to stop the elementals, but then the accidental damage it did to Legacy and Vintage is like much greater.
I have heard something similar. Yeah, so it's something similar that people who had a contact with WotC designers said the intention was to be an answer to Fury in Modern. Then they realized that that was not going to ever work, so they just banned Fury and they printed Vexing Bubble anyway. And now we're all being punished for their sins. So yeah,
thanks Fury. Do. I guess I played Fury and Vexing Bubble in the same Legacy deck, so that's kind of fitting.
I've done that before. I played a little bit of Painter. I was about to play Painter for the main event, and I realized how
didn't Ari Lex actually get like a top 8 with Paint? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, I beat him in the semis.
Ooh, how did you do that? Rather quickly, I would guess, right?
Yeah, so that's like the one thing about the Painter versus Forge matchup is it's a fairly sharp matchup, but it's still 70-30. I basically just mulligan to a turn 2 way to either turn off the Painter combo. So turn 2 Kozilek's Command, turn 2 One Ring, turn 2 Karn is what I keep. I assume he has to keep a turn 2 kill, or he's actually dead in the water. If the Forge deck untaps on turn 3, the Painter deck can almost not win.
Well, that's pretty rough, right? The Painter, like, it has a turn 2 kill so rarely.
Yeah. No, but I say in the semis, I was luckily the 3 seed and was able to on the play against Ari. He like mulliganed to 5, looked pretty dejected, and then just ripped a turn 2 kill at me on the draw and luckily got disrupted. That was like the kind of hand the Painter deck needs.
Yeah, but, Painter plus Blast can also kind of
that's what I was going to mention.
But it's not as straight. Like Karn is really like Karn from your side, the Forge side is really just like lights out for Painter.
Yeah, there's also like a couple other goofy interactions of like Painter turning everything colored makes your Forge a lot worse because you can no longer cast Karns, Fleshbreakers, and Kozilek's Command, and you can't actually win the game with a Painter in play because all of your spawns are colored and none of your spells trigger Fleshbreaker because they're also all colored.
Yeah, I mean you can Karn Lattice, right? That's kind of the way to.
You can Karn Lattice and start attacking them. But the thing about Karn Lattice is Lattice actually resets everything to colorless again, so you can start comboing.
Well, there you go.
So you use like Lattice for color fixing, just like accidental damage to the opponent, but you need a color fixer.
or you just like eventually find a Kozilek's Command to answer the Painter, but it's definitely funny. I was trying to focus on my quarterfinal match, and I already had to call the judge on the other Forge player for casting Fleshbreaker off the top with a Painter in play.
By the way, that Kozilek's Command is carrying so much weight. Like I also watched your interview with Help Me Out Echo Baronin on YouTube. Shoutouts to him. And you what you mentioned about Kozilek's Command, what that card can do, and like all the situation gets you out of. I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? It's basically like the colorless cryptic command. Yeah. But that card is doing so many crazy things.
That's what I said. It's like it seemed like it was printed explicitly to make the Forge deck kind of work because all 4 modes are all really good, all answer a different thing, and are all just broken when stapled together with a bunch of ways to make a bunch of mana.
Yeah, that card is really, really strong. And I was playing a lot of Eldrazi right when MH3 dropped because even though the deck I had come up with at that point was a pretty far cry from like this stock list that we've settled on, the deck is insane and the core pieces are insane. I know that some people, like including me, I think one piece, if we're like banning stuff, I think something from Eldrazi needs to get hit.
Yeah.
People are either like Myco Spawn or Fleshbreaker. Personally, like I see the arguments for both, and I'm sure that we'll have a ban discussion later, but like personally I'm on the Fleshbreaker should probably go side. And one of the reasons why is
pretty insane
how it interacts with Kozilek's Command. And because if Kozilek's Command in like a fair-ish Ancient Tomb deck does give them, I think, a little bit of extra power and utility that they'd never had access to before in a way that might just let them keep up with, as the other decks just kind of get comparatively stronger, they might just also need this angle. And that's okay, I think. Like to give Ancient Tomb decks a way to force a Doomsday player with no library to draw a card with their Oracle trigger on the stack. Stuff like that. Like I think that's maybe a net good. But
it would be balanced if you said X can be no greater than 3. And then that would be fine. It just gets absurd when it's like X equals 6, I stack my deck, I can't lose from here. You have to have a forceful every turn of the game or you die.
Yep, yeah. Also, you can't cast your forces because I have a bobble in play.
Yes. Also, the mode that's also just Fireball. Like, I had an opponent under ring protection. I was like, I will float 40 mana in your upkeep. I will Fireball you. And if you try to do crop rotations for a Glacial Chasm, I will Fireball you again. Because, it just says Fireball had it for whatever reason.
Right, because when you're scrying that deep, it's basically Demonic Tutor as well.
It is stack target player's library, especially with Forge, where you start just ripping spells off the top.
Oh yeah, it's that deck is busted. So quickly touching on Vintage a little more, I think Yeah, Vintage is a lot more of an accessible format than I think people give it credit to. You do it online, it's not expensive. It's the same price as Legacy, if not a little less. And then in paper,
Unless you want the really beautiful old frame
yeah,
Power 9 cards.
which I do have. I spent too much money to get them, and it feels great. It's a great flex. And speaking of great flexes, so Julian, I was borrowing the 6 pieces of power that I was running going to Pittsburgh. I didn't own any of them. I left Pittsburgh owning 4.
Whoa, okay.
That's huge. I think we saw that on the Twitter, right? Like I definitely saw this Mox Sapphire, I think. Dude, congrats.
Yeah, so I sold Moto tickets basically before this to justify buying a Mox Sapphire, because I could like buy it with regular money. Like I have the money to do so, but it's just, as a parent of 2 kids with like, a mortgage and vacations and everything to plan, it's not a responsible use of my, salary money to do that. But if I'm spending like Moto Monopoly bucks on it, it's just like I can justify doing it. So
the card is coming out of the machine. I'm sorry, I didn't spend any money. All
Exactly,
of a sudden, it wasn't a mail. I'm sorry, I couldn't do anything.
Exactly. The same way, like, I don't play Moto for a profit. It's just like, it's a hobby. So, I cashed out 3,500 tickets. I bought a Mox Sapphire for a little bit north of 3K. And then...
What? That's how much you have to pay for a Mox these days?
Yeah,
Yes.
well, exactly.
Oh,
So,
God.
and then I ended up trading with a high-end vendor my foil tinker I got for top 8ing Vintage for a heavily played Time Walk and Ancestral Recall. And then I used some of my winnings from winning the event to buy a Mox Jet.
So what are you still missing now?
I'm missing a Lotus, which is, not insignificant. And I'm missing a Mox Pearl as far as cards I'd want. I'm a
Why is
Lotus
Mox
away
Pearl
from
always
Doomsday.
the last one people get? I'm so
Because
sorry for Mox
it
Pearl.
doesn't cast... Because it
casts
doesn't
almost
cast
nothing.
Doomsday. It doesn't work for Doomsday. And
Yeah.
like my goal would be to get Doomsday first.
Yeah.
And then, so that's at least for me why that's not the priority. But, I don't have a Ruby or Emerald either, and I'll get a Pearl before I get this.
Okay. So maybe you should like finish up on Vintage here, but Max, can you help us out? Why did you end up picking Espalures? And other than the obvious choices, are there any like special touches you put on the deck that not everybody's playing?
Yeah, actually, my list is pretty far from stock. So I played Espalures because I think that the deck is the best deck, but also like by a little bit, not by a huge margin, but also because it is able to leverage, strong like Legacy Fair Blue Magic fundamentals in Vintage, which if I don't play Vintage quite as much, is something that's really good for me to be able to do. I do better than most people with like Esper Stoneblade and Legacy, right? Like I like those kind of grindy Esper colored decks. And so that's why I played it. And then as far as, deviating from stock, I made a lot of changes to the deck to get stable mana. People in Vintage, at least the list that I was seeing, were not respecting their mana base. They're playing like maybe 14 blue sources and like 13 white, 13 black. The opponent I played on Demir Luris in the finals was only playing 13 blue, 13 black initial sources. So I played 2 Lorien, so I played 18 lands. I cut a Wasteland to add more solid mana into the deck, like real colors. I played a Lotus Petal that people don't play because in addition to being a color stabilizer, it casts turn 1 Lavinia, it casts turn 1 Psychic Frog. Lavinia, obviously getting it down turn 1 is huge because it shuts off a lot of what your opponent can do with regard to Moxen and forcing and stuff like that. And then getting a Psychic Frog down a turn earlier, as you've seen from like the Tempo Doomsday decks in Legacy, you make that card advantage or card disadvantage back with a single Frog hit. So it's like net neutral there. And so, I played a Lotus Petal in addition to that. And then I played 2 Lorien Revealed as well in order to just kind of get, those color sources, but also because I'm making all these things to help my mana get more stable, if I get into a top deck war, or just like a game going really long, which in Vintage it does often do. Like games of Vintage often get to like 13, 14 turns, no problem. And if we're top decking, I'd much rather top deck a Lorien Revealed than a fetch land. And so, I played 6 fetches, 2 Lorien Revealeds as like kind of a fetch Lorien split. And then the other thing I did is I played 2 Ponders because, again, consistency. I wanted to be able to find my lands and find the right ones, and oftentimes I don't know going into it. It's like, what does my opponent wasteland? And I need to find that color again. And so I was able to play 2 Ponders and get that to fit. And as far as what I cut for that, I'm not playing Mishra's Bauble because I it's a kind of like a face down card when you're evaluating your hand. You don't know what it does. It's weak into Lavinia. It's weak into like an opposing vexing bubble. And again, it's just kind of like, it's when you're evaluating your hands in Vintage, you really kind of need to know what your hand is doing. And Mishra's Bubble is just a little bit too random for me. So not playing that. And then I cut down from 4 Orchestra Bowmasters, which is like stock everywhere, down to 2. Because outside of the mirror, I don't think Bowmaster is actually that good in Vintage. Like the Jewel deck, even though they're drawing 35 cards, at some point they'll give themselves One Ring protection. And so you're no longer hitting them with it, or they can just metamorph your Bowmaster, at which case you have to deal with the Bowmaster. And then a lot of the other decks like don't really care too much about it. Like again, good in the mirror, but like not that great elsewhere. And like Initiative, like their creatures are mostly too big for Bowmaster to matter. So yeah, down to 2 Bowmaster. And then I played a Nethergoyf, and I checked afterward. I thought there was going to be no one else who registered Nethergoyf in the entire tournament, but there was one, and he went 4/4 and then dropped, I think. But he was playing with this 4-color Lurrus monstrosity. It looked pretty cool, but again, not stable mana at all there. So going back to the Nethergoyf, I just thought, game 1 against the combo decks or whatever, or against Initiative, I want to get a threat down. I want to kind of like leverage my Spell Pierces and Forces to just kind of keep them off balance before I can get my real hate cards in there. And so Nethergoyf helps close the game 1 early. It's really good in the Lurrus mirrors because it's got a good stat block. And then obviously,
So what's the usual size for Nethergoyf in this deck? Is it like a 4/5 most of the time?
So because I'm playing, it's 4/5 most of the time, but because I'm playing, artifacts that I can sacrifice with the Vexing Bubble, Nighthill Spellbomb, I'm playing a Dress Down in the main deck, which is also not stock, but I like it against Oath and against Doomsday. Because like against Oath, you can put it in off of Show and Tell, and their Atraxas don't trigger or anything like that. So
hardest
it's
part
good
of the
there.
deck after all.
Yep, it's good against Doomsday, because of Oracle interactions, stuff like that. It's good against Initiative because they're like landing this uncounterable Initiative creature. You can still Dress Down and stop the Initiative from occurring. It's really good in the Lurrus mirror because you can actually cast Dress Down on your end step to shut off your opponent's creatures for their turn, and then and your creatures work on your turn. So yeah, my own end step cast Dress Down is a really cool play in the Lurrus mirror that actually came up a few times. So yeah, these are like kind of the atypical things I did, but what it means is that I have all these card types for Nethergoyf. So Nethergoyf can be a 6/7 in the deck. Which usually a 4/5, but sometimes smaller, sometimes bigger.
I feel like these days it's rather rare for a creature to just be good because of its stats. Like Nethergoyf, like you don't play this guy for his what's it called, like Unearth? No, the
Escape Clause, yeah.
Yeah, like you don't do that, right? It's just a 1-mana Tarmogoyf basically.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, but against like Initiative, if I don't have a creature in play and they play uncounterable Initiative creature, I remove their Initiative creature. It doesn't even matter that much. They play just another thing. They're on the attack still. They're going through the dungeon. I'm on the back foot. But if I have a turn when Nethergoyf in play, they play their Initiative creature, I remove their Initiative creature, I attack, and then I hold the Initiative, I win.
Yeah, dude.
That's also the idea behind having like a 1-drop specifically, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And likewise, against Doomsday or Oath, or like whatever combo deck, like just shutting them out a couple turns faster than I would otherwise do in game 1 was really good.
That's
so in some way, this is the Tarmogoyf slot that some Vintage players used to play.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Delver of Secrets almost, because like your deck is actually not that bad in flipping Delver, so it has like 25 instants and sorceries.
Yeah, it's basically a Delver. Yeah, it's just it hits and it's efficient and it comes in fast. It lets me only costume 1. I can hold up Spell Pierce and stuff like that.
Yeah, dude. Like it totally reminds me of like when Delver of Secret actually came out in 2011 and people were like, yeah, we can play this as a 1-off, maybe it's a 2-off, in our deck. And like seeing this now in Vintage is actually kind of phenomenal.
Which year did you say Delver came out, Kai?
2011.
No?
Yes, it was 2011.
Okay, help me, God.
Gotcha.
I thought you said 2007 or something. I was like, wait, what?
No. That was like
okay.
that was like
I got you, Kai.
Pancake
Don't
Flipper,
worry
man.
about
Yeah.
He said 2011, Julian. There's no way he said 2007. No, don't re-listen to the podcast. You Just trust me.
But I'm gonna be the one editing this, and I'm definitely gonna have AI have Kai say something like 1996 or something.
Oh god damn it.
Back then when Delver terrorized the early meta game, and then we had to ban it, and like, it got purged from history. You know what Starling did to his like generous and everything. That's what we did to Delver in the 90s.
The original
Then 20
Delver
years
Seeker is
later-
Kurt Ape.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, pretty much. Kiert Dimension of oh my god, that name.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be clear, I do cut Nethergoyf postboard against those decks, but game one, in addition to being like good, actively good in the initiative matchup and good in the mirror, it does just help close the game faster against combo decks. Yep.
Cool.
I have proselytized Nethergoyf enough. We can move on.
How many copies have we sold of Nethergoyf right now? Right?
I mean,
I
as
should
we're
have bought
still
copies.
as we're still in vintage, like I was gonna ask you, like what was your worst play of the weekend?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so my worst play of the weekend. So the play that I think was, I have two. I have one where I made decisions and one where I overlapped. So the worst play I made of the weekend was where I attacked with an Orcish Bowmaster and an Orc army into an onboard Collector Oof against a Bug midrange. And it's sitting in the middle of the table. I just forgot it exists. And I attacked. And then my opponent's
The collective, dude, like a man.
I attacked
That could
like 2 1/1s into a Collector Oof. And I was like, for a second, like, do I have the Bowmaster? Like bluffing as soon as I sent it. But my opponent's like, I'm behind enough that I have to call your bluff. And he blocked anyway and blocked my Bowmaster. I'm like, yeah, honestly, I don't know. It's sitting in the middle of the table. I just forgot it
Just put
exists.
in the graveyard.
Oh man.
But I think that's just kind of like absent-minded, whatever. The worst play I made was actually on camera against David in that crazy game 3 we had in the semifinals, where my plan was I was pondering and sculpting my hand. I had a Tundra in play. I had 3 colorless lands in hand. I had a Wasteland, Strip Mine, and Urza Saga. And I pondered and I found a Caracas, and I was able to use that and a Lavinia, and I was planning to put like my second turn I was going to be able to play Caracas, and with the Tundra in play cast Lavinia, and then from there play Urza Saga. I had a Containment Priest as well, kind of go from there, and that's how I was planning to proceed through the game. David plays pretty conservatively, but then David adapted to my play and actually just jammed an Oath of Druids into play really quick. And I was like, oh, I have to respond to this. And so I can't waste my turn casting a Lavinia anymore. I need to cast my Containment Priest. And so what I could have done is I could have played my Urza Saga at that point and done Tundra Saga, cast Containment Priest. And instead, because I'd already planned to play the Caracas for Lavinia, I didn't change my land sequencing plan. And I played out this Caracas, which is such an integral card in the matchup for no reason, just letting him know, hey, I have this Atraxa answer. And if you find something, you can answer it. And like you can prioritize getting a Besage or a Strip Mine or what have you. And I was really fortunate that he milled those cards so that it didn't happen. But that was a huge mistake from my side. It was a huge information leak. It was a huge strategic giveaway. And yeah, that's probably the worst play I made of the weekend.
Oh yeah. Like I mean the best Caracas is the one they don't know about, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it was just a huge punt on my end. I should have played the Saga there to play the Containment Priest. But
I mean, it could also show like overconfidence, right? If your opponent sees you doing like something like that.
I mean, yeah, but at that point, I'd much rather my David, spend his Strip Mine or Besage blowing up my Urza Saga, which is like a pretty high priority tournament.
Of course.
That was a so much better play. I was just really lucky to not get punished. And then did you also ask best play or not yet?
Yeah, now that you're about it, just toss in the best play too.
It's not like you actually put it in the show notes, Kai.
Yeah. So, I just couldn't remember what you had asked. But anyway, yeah. So best play was in Legacy. I was playing Sink and Show against Mystic Forge. My opponent had resolved a One Ring on their turn, so they had protection. I resolved a Sneak Attack on mine, so I couldn't do anything with my Archon of Cruelty because they had protection. And so I just kind of did a dejective play Sneak Attack pass, just kind of acted like I was dead and let them combo off for a bit. And they were from One Ring took them from 6 to 5, and then they had an Ancient Tomb in play, and it was just kind of sitting there
I can see where this is
bored.
going.
No way.
So I was just sitting there completely bored,
off?
just tracking their mana, making sure they were making legal plays or whatever. And as soon as he goes to 3 to tap to cast something, I'm like, I have a response. I activate Sneak Attack. I put an Archon of Cruelty, and I cast Bump in the Night. And so,
dude, I think you ended your opponent's whole career. I think.
Yeah,
with this.
he was just stunned.
This is this is just not okay. It's like the most like illegal lightning bolt you were about to cast. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I activated sneak attack and put in lightning bolt.
Oh god damn it. That is pretty stylish too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the best play I made. Because I was just like, I was paying no attention to my hand. I wasn't like pausing after various spots. I was just like, yeah. Like, go, do your thing. See what you can do. And that was the best way that I could have left that.
Oh man. Yeah, this is beautiful. I see this like also often enough at the higher tables of tournaments where people like act like they're F6ing, right? They just go keep going. Yeah, okay, just kind of everything resolves kind of thing, right? And then like when it really matters, like when you like it happened to me like 10 years ago. So for example, like, and I put that lethal tendrils on stack, and then they actually had a stifle, for example, for the storm trigger.
And I was like, I've never seen that
dude,
before.
Yeah,
What
I was like so short about like flipping the entire table, but like this is actually really good gameplay when you just act like you got absolute nothing going on, and you
But you really gotta sell it, because if you don't sell it, like it backfires kind of almost.
Dude, I feel like especially in paper tournaments, like acting also kind of is rewarding, I think.
It also depends on like which person you're acting on.
Yeah.
You can't overact. If you overact, it's clear that you're bluffing.
Yeah. I will never forget, I played elves against, I might have told this before, but I'm so proud of it. At a local tournament, I played elves against the Epic Storm in Legacy. And the guy had basically had me dead in the first game. He went like for this pretty huge storm count, did some things. And actually, he wasn't playing the Epic Storm. He was playing Ad Nauseam Tendrils. Anyways, so he wasn't new, but he was like, he gave me a lot of respect, because back then I was actually like winning tournaments and stuff a long time ago. And so locally, like some guys were respecting me more than they should. And I kind of used that, and I was like, oh yeah. And now you have the discard spell from Mindbreak Trap. Okay, there we go. It was game one. And he was like, Mindbreak Trap? I said, yeah, of course. You just like, you discard it, then you kill me with tendrils, just show me. And he didn't have a discard spell. He only had the tendrils. And he was like, I don't have the discard spell yet. Pass the turn.
Wow. Well done.
Yeah. I don't know how I made that work, but that was quite something.
Great game, dude. Great game.
Yeah. I was just like, show me the discard spell and the tendrils, and it's over. And he's like, oh shit, I only got tendrils. Oh.
I love it.
That one goes into that was a Dear Diary moment, kind of.
Yeah.
So Max, once again, congratulations to taking on the tournament. I think we don't really have time to go through all of your rounds individually,
Yeah,
but I think people will be.
Yeah,
I think people will be able to listen to that. Are you gonna like upload a complete review on your YouTube channel or somewhere?
So I actually did this past Saturday, so November 30th, whenever you're listening to this, I actually put on my YouTube channel a big tournament recap. So if you want to see a lot of detail, and also I do voiceover commentary of my semifinals and finals match. So you can see exactly what's going on. I also got raw footage of the semifinals from Honorog, so I was able to like get hand cams in there the whole time and like really talk in detail about like the match breakdown. And that was probably one of the craziest matches I played in memory. So yeah, that was I launched that Saturday morning California time, so Saturday during the day wherever it is you live. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's up on my YouTube channel at McStortion2G, so you can see more detail there on as far as exactly how my tournament went.
Awesome, that's great. By the way, you mentioned a lot of people actually recognized you by your voice and not by your looks.
Yeah, so I have a pretty
Is that a compliment
voice.
Or not?
I think it just means I have a distinctive voice. It doesn't necessarily mean like a good thing or bad thing. You can let me know there, but my voice is my voice. But it just means that because I go camera off for my YouTube videos and stuff, I'm just doing, silent voiceover on my tournaments. And so when people are watching me, they're not seeing me, they're listening to me speak. And so I think a lot of people just don't know exactly what I look like. But they, as soon as they hear me speak, like, oh, shit, are you Max Dortion? I'm like, yeah, nice to meet you. And then we chat. But yeah, that's also because, I said I use my real name for in-person tournaments. And there's enough Maxes that it's not like clear that Max Gilmore would be Max Dortion as opposed to any other Max.
What does Max Dortion actually mean?
It's a portmanteau of my name. And so in an old episode of Futurama, which I loved growing up, Bender says that he hates blackmail as a word, and he prefers extortion because the X makes it sound cool. And so it's a portmanteau of Max and extortion.
Okay.
It's basically the Bender quote. Like the Bender quote is what I'm referencing.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Vintage. Would you say the format is like in a healthy state? Like, is it a good time to play Vintage right now?
Yeah,
Because
I think
feel
it is. Also, it is, but also Vintage is this super unexplored format. Like people, like I deviated from stock or whatever with Esper Luris, but there's a ton of archetypes that I'm sure exist in Vintage right now that just don't because no one has come up with them. So if you're this like creative deck builder and you want to play like powerful cards and put them together in powerful ways, I think Vintage is this actually super open, underexplored format that you can leverage. Like Justin Gennari played a Oswald brew that he won a challenge with a couple weeks ago in Eternal Weekend and went
like
seven.
Oswald Fiddlebender, the
exactly.
white dude.
Yep. Like Oswald PO. It's really pretty cool deck. It's like a Turbo Vault Q deck. Yeah, he played that, went 7-2. Nathan Stewart actually picked up his list, also went 7-2. Yeah, it's a solid deck, but the point is, like, if you brew in Vintage, like, it's a great place to brew. And Magic Online, it's, again, not that expensive. So you can get a leg up on people just by playing things they don't expect. Dreadhorde Arcanist so is legal in Vintage. Ponder is now unrestricted, and no one is taking advantage of that. Like, nobody.
I'm looking at the list right now. Like, how many Ponders are people playing?
0 to 1. I forget. I don't
really?
know. Like Doomsday plays 4.
Doomsday plays 4 and Breach plays 4. A lot of everyone else is playing 0 to 2. I was playing 4. You kind of need it in some of the Breach decks.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like it's very powerful. Like in Legacy, can you imagine? Like, oh yeah, I'm like my Esper Stoneblade deck. I'm not playing Ponder. Like it's like 2010 again. Like like we figured out how good Ponder is. And Dreadhorde Arcanist is really, really good once you have a critical mass of good cantrips, and in addition to Ancestral Recall and the like. So, but no one's playing that. No one's playing Ragavan right now. Like obviously Ragavan's a bit weak to Orcish Bowmaster, but the point being is that like you have good cards in red that. And like these fair decks that people aren't leveraging. It's just it's either straight blue-black Luris or it's Esper Luris because of Sword Splashers. But like Jessica Luris could be very good. You could play Deathrite Shaman in these decks. Like people aren't doing it. There's a lot of ways that you could leverage and build a Vintage deck that just people aren't doing. And you can get a huge leg up by brewing in the format. So even if you look at Vintage and you don't love the archetypes that you see there, make one. I think that the space is there.
That's cool. You heard it here from the champion of the North American Vintage Eternal Weekend 2024, Max Gilmore. Max, thank you so much for sharing your insights there. And Kelvin, well, actually, now we're getting to you. Like, we introduced Max almost like an hour ago, but help me out again, Kelvin. Where are you from? How long have you been playing, Legacy, Vintage, Magic in general? And if you were a vegetable, which one would you be and why? As Max actually avoided that question.
Well, I played the fifth.
Yeah. So, I'm Kelvin. I'm originally from Seattle. I did spend a good amount of time in Toronto. I'm on like the younger side of the Eternal crowd, so I've only been in the format for about 10 years at this point, but I started when I was like 14 years old and freshly started high school. I've been mainly playing Legacy and Vintage almost exclusively because like Standard got a little boring. It was definitely less interesting than wastelanding your opponent. So I'm familiar with Kai's name because I used to be friends with he used to be around Seattle with James Johnson, is a noted Ant player, and we love to jam Ant.
Heck initially. Yeah, brother.
Yeah, so
that's awesome, buddy.
Yeah, so I had a great intro to the format that I wanted to jam Ant into a Treasure Cruise meta, and these blue-red aggro force wheel decks were racing me in my Dark Ritual combo deck. So it's a good place to start. But after that, like you want to move on from Legacy, see what the most powerful thing is. Like want to cast some Black Lotuses. So I've also been playing like Vintage on and off, like probably 2017, where like the first EW Vintage event I played, I bummed some power and played TPS in 2018 or 2019. Then I played Oath last year in Vintage, and I played the Underworld Breach, Whole Breacher combo deck this year. So love playing some Vintage. That's like the one tournament a year where you actually get to play real cards and play real Vintage against stiff competition.
Kelvin, quick question for you.
Yeah.
With regard to the breach decks, like Luris Breach is a viable way to play it, but also, as you said, like the Tinker, Hull Breacher, deck fade inversion. Can you explain if you considered either version? And I know you ended up playing the non-Luris version, but can you explain if you considered the Luris one, what led you to go?
I have considered the Luris version because like Luris is probably like the best card in Vintage at the moment, and it's just extremely powerful, especially when like you recur Underworld Breach. Like Luris has the option where you just fair breach like every turn. Like you cast your breach, you like recall twice, your breach dies, and then on some previous turn some following turn you can just cast your breach again and start going. The thing is, it was just far too weak to cards like Leyland of the Void from your opponent and other graveyard hate because you just did not have Hull Breacher plus Wheel or Bolas the Citadel to really go over the top. So you're just so much worse in the Breach Mirror and against a lot of the other Luris decks with graveyard hate.
That makes sense. So you're kind of playing this almost like 2-card Monty version where Breach is like one of your combos, but you just throw a combo at them.
And additionally, Jewel like absolutely ravaged the field last year to put 6 copies in top 8, and your Breach or your Jewel matchup is single-handedly really good just because you have 3 Hull Breachers in your deck.
Yes.
In the main deck, especially. Also,
right. And you can Dak Faden, which is good.
Yes, you can Dak Faden, and also like. You're playing Vintage. Why would you only want to play 8 pieces of power when you can play 9 pieces of power and play a Time Twister too?
Yeah. Oh man. Like you hear a lot of like less is more, but in Vintage is like more is more.
Yeah, there's a few Seattle gamers that are playing decks just so they could maximize their flex, how much they were flexing. Like. I'm playing Jewel because putting 4 copies of Mishra's Workshop in my already full power deck is a flex.
Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, David Tao played his a Mind Twist in the sideboard of his Oath deck, and it's not because he necessarily thought it was strategically optimal, but it was because he wanted to play a Mind Twist.
I saw that when I was watching coverage. All of a sudden, like I saw Mind Twist there. I was like, "Ooh, okay, is this coming back or making a first proper appearance in Vintage?" Because the last time I saw Mind Twist in Vintage was like many years ago in some workshop decks that were terrible.
So, Julian, trivia question for you.
No, wait. You can't put workshop mana into it. It was something else.
Is Mind Twist restricted or not?
In Vintage?
Yep.
I don't think it's restricted.
Oh, dude, that's a good question. That's just never come up so far.
That's actually a really good trivia question because I don't know. I mean, you probably know it. I'm looking it up right now, but I don't think it's.
I guessed wrong. I guessed I looked it up. I was wrong.
You thought it was restricted?
I thought it was once.
Yeah,
it's just not
many
anymore.
Moons ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still, the artwork. There's something about it. I'm looking at it right now.
I mean, at this point, I keep forgetting that card's even banned in Legacy.
Julie Barreau, I've never heard of it. Kai, you know all the artists. Who's Julie Barreau?
Oh, she's the same artist who also did Underworld Dreams, I think, like this black enchantment from Legends or something. Really badass. Yeah, whenever an opponent draws a card, they take a damage. Pretty cool card.
I'm looking at some of her. She also did Elf's Spirit Guides, Aladdin, Alibaba. She did a lot of early stuff. Tetsuzo Misawa.
Yeah.
Sindbad, which is actually a really insane card when you play Momia. Have you guys played Momia Basic?
Oh yeah,
I love Momia Basic.
Do it. That's a good format. Really fun.
It's so
really random
fun.
Too. Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I love it.
It's hella random. Yeah, especially if you pull Phage or something.
Oh, she did the artwork for my favorite card ever, Cobalt Drill Sergeant. You guys know what the card does?
No idea.
Okay, actually, I guess it's not a summoned Drill Sergeant anymore. It's a creature Cobalt Soldier. A colorless and a red, 1/2. Other Cobalt creatures you control get +0, +1, and trample.
Oh, dude, that's badass.
How is that card designed? Yeah, we're gonna pump the toughness, and then they get trample. Maybe there's a joke in there I'm not getting, but it's just like the card design is so funny to me.
The joke is that a lot of kobolds are 0/1s, right? So now there's 0/2 tramples.
Yeah, they're God damn it.
Trample.
Like that's pretty funny. It toughens them up and lets them trample. Like flavor wise, sure. Practically, no.
Some fun games, yeah.
Cool. So, Kelvin, I think I want to say I've heard that you worked very quickly for everybody listening. Kelvin won that entire thing playing Mystic Forge. And I heard you are part of some secret Mystic Forge cabal that has been brewing and working on the deck for like aeons.
Not aeons. So the Seattle Legacy crew is very dedicated and does not really have a lot of other distractions magic-wise. They focus on Legacy. They love playing Legacy. And we are all, like, notably controller ponder players. If you find their names and look them up, you see results on Miracles, like Canadian Thresh, like Team America, like go back and have these like old like Legacy bangers, but they're all blue players. We're not a Forge cabal, but we simply determined that Forge was absolutely broken for this event after seeing the results from EW Asia and testing. So now we're known as the secret Forge cabal, but I think we're just dedicated Legacy players that broke the format. One of the
how many people are we
members,
talking? How many people are we talking about for the team?
It's a core group of about 8 people. I think our Discord server is about 20. And yeah, so one of our members dubbed the Team Ponder Sucks, because he's like cutting Ponder from his control deck because it was simply too slow, and you couldn't tap you could not tap 1 mana on your first turn to find a second land just because of how fast the format was and how you had to hold up something like Consign to Memory that people were playing in their main deck. So yeah, let's go with Team Ponder Sucks. And we're all people who love casting Ponders, love cantripping, and love dirtling. But we all picked up Mystic Forge because it was a little bit broken. I think on the data sheet had a 63% non-mirror win rate, and our internal team win rate was 77% across 6 players.
Okay, that's pretty insane. Are the 2 other Mystic Forge players in the top 8, are those part of your team? Like we got John Barber and Joshua Kronk?
John Barber was the person behind a lot of the tech and probably played the most leagues out of all of us. So the sideboard was a lot of his innovations, and he probably dropped like 30 plus 4-0 leagues in order to keep the tech concealed. Joshua Kronk did not work with us and was independently brought Forge.
Yeah, 77% is absolutely. Has there ever been like a team win rate of a deck that high? Like I know that when I was playing Underworld Breach, personally, like as a pretty good player playing the broken deck, my win rate was like 78%.
Yeah.
Over 100, like 77% over like several people in a huge tournament is absolutely like unheard. The variance of Magic is higher than that.
Yeah, I like brag a lot if I have like a 70% win rate. So
yeah,
like just like for context of, let's say, the Canadian Regional Championship, a 76% win rate qualified you for the Pro Tour. So that was a high enough finish to qualify you for the Pro Tour. But our team collectively had a higher win rate than that in a massive Legacy event.
Right, on average.
Yes, on average. And also, we collectively went 3-1 in the top 8, and our win rate went down.
It's like when I'm trying to remember that. Anyway, that's too big of a story. But dude, that's amazing. Like, how did you actually end up on Forge being the most broken thing to do in Legacy? Because I feel like people, we already mentioned, right? Flashraker, Cosy Command, the interaction there. And it also feels kind of weird because I often feel that the Mystic Forge deck isn't necessarily primarily a Forge deck, primarily. Is that true? Because I also noticed you only play 2 copies in the main deck and 1 in the sideboard for Karen.
It's definitely a 1-ring combo deck, but we call it Forge because like it's the only deck that plays Forge. There's a lot of other decks that play 1-ring. And then also like the Mystic Forge was like it was the first card it was the card that was printed first out of the archetype. So it used to be like as soon as Mystic Forge was printed, it was like a cool oddity where you like play a bunch of artifacts, play like Monolith plus Paradox Engine, make 30 mana Ballista someone, or like Aetherflux Reservoir or something random like that. And like that's why like the Forge name stuck, is because that was like the initial build, and then these cards that came later like Karn or like 1-ring or like Fleshraker were kind of inserted into like the previously existing archetype. Yeah. Oh yeah. So one name that someone did suggest was a Keychain combo. It's kind of funny. Yeah. Because like if keys, you chain them off, and you have a ring. So that's kind of what we're doing. But the way we kind of identified it was broken is that my kind of like rule of thumb for a broken deck in the field is like 56% win rate. We looked over the EW Asia data, even though Forge had no copies in top 8, it had a 60% win rate against the field across 100 matches, which is not a big sample size, but enough that we thought it was interesting.
It's a reasonable indicator, right?
Yeah. We looked at some of these lists. They're kind of interesting. Like some of them weren't playing 4 Kozilek's Command. Some of them were playing some very odd choices in the mana base. And we just copy-pasted them and then just started 5-0ing. So we kind of caught the attention of some like legacy podcasters. They were saying this deck is bad. You shouldn't play it. It's too high variance. It's got no agency. Deck sucks, and it's a pilot diff. The pilot who was Gal the 5-0s initially was Juju Bean. So they're like, oh, it's a pilot diff. The deck sucks. Don't play it. Whatever. And then we heard that. We're like, oh, okay, we're covered. The content creators are shit talking our decks. There aren't going to be any no rods.
So who was shit talking your deck? Now I'm curious.
It was one Brian Koval of Eternal Glory. He said he shouldn't play the deck. The deck is bad. And
Okay,
that's funny.
Yeah, so we saw that. We're just like, okay, we're locking it in. Deck is broken.
That's even more reason to lock it in then. Okay, we've officially been shit-talked in public. Okay, now we gotta show them.
Yeah, we're being shit-talked or like trashing our deck, and that means like it's a deck where you do not the sideboard hammers are pretty insane. So you don't really want to see 2-3 no rods in every deck. So if the deck's being publicly trashed of a deck you shouldn't bring to no rod, or shouldn't bring to Eternal Weekend, we may see like a few less no rods. And then also, that's also kind of when we recognized that as we identified the deck was broken and had ways to beat a lot of these cards, we would have an advantage over the field because the rest of Legacy Hive Mind had not really discovered what we had discovered.
I remember like Callum was mentioning this on our Discord, right? That he kept telling people to run null rods. I didn't really see that, but maybe he did it on a different Discord, and he felt validated when you guys actually did end up doing pretty well with the Mystic Forge deck.
Yeah, but your answers, the way you built talk about the way you built your mana base and the way that you built it. That was going to be my next question because your mana base is totally different from what I've seen in these Mystic Forge decks.
Yeah, so our main analysis in our kind of initial approach to the deck was that we weren't winning games by simply jamming a 4-drop quickly. We're winning games by jamming a 4-drop quickly and having mana to combo off afterwards. So we wanted to have like a stable mana base because our initial approach was just like City Trader's Ancient Tomb, whatever that card is, Crystal Vein, which meant we could turn 1 or turn 2 Karn or Ring very efficiently, but it was kind of hard to actually turn 2 Ring and then chain off a combo if you only had 2 mana from your lands or 3 mana in play. Because it kind of require to actually win from there, you do need to chain a bunch of spells or forge into like Fleshraker into Kozilek's Command and really chain off. So Ring with 3 mana wasn't a kill to like 1 or 2 turns later. Ring with 7 mana from your lands absolutely was a turn 3 kill. And then we found out that the existence of Vexing Bauble in particular over Defense Grid meant we were not under as much pressure to make 2 mana on turn 1 to have a protected combo on turn 2. So there were a lot of times where I would just mulligan fairly aggressively to 5. My 5-card hand would just have Tower, Nexus, Bauble, 1 Ring, and the game just simply wouldn't be close. So I would just play my Bauble, play my Ring on turn 2, unmulligan, and then when my Ring starts going off, I will find like a Urza's Workshop or another tower in the top 5 or 6 cards, and now my lands just tap for 7 on turn 3, and then on turn 4 they tap for 11. We got to the point in the finals where I was locked under 4 copies of Null Rod, and I had 13 mana to cast a Kozilek's Command using just my lands, and my lands and spawn tokens.
So again, what is the sideboard card that says every land can only produce 1 mana that people sometimes use against crowded decks and stuff?
Damping Sphere.
Damping Sphere, that's the one.
I had a sideboard copy in my Nadu list.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Yeah, so I think that would be good. Like that would definitely be a good card, especially out of Nadu, because Nadu is not the ideal matchup. Oh,
the problem I had from the Nadu side is like drawing a bunch of cards, like, and then passing the turn, like holding up a couple forces was not sufficient because of bubble. But if I'm able to like draw into and cast a Damping Sphere, all of a sudden it's relevant, and also I can like jam a cantrip to increase the cost of my spells by 1, and then all of a sudden I can cast a Force of Will into Vexing Bubble.
which is kind of funny is internally our internal testing against Nadu is we had a few Nadu players who would play that side of the matchup. Is their sideboard largely had a lot of Veil of Summers, and they would side them all in against Mystic Forge. So the idea being is they would try to combo, have a bunch of forces. Like they would like combo, draw on my turn, draw on your turn. If you actually played anything worth countering, they would just go Veil of Summer and then just start Force of Willing through your bauble.
Yeah, that's a great call as well. And also, if you're bringing in Dismembered or something to, kill the creatures, you're able to veil those.
Yes.
You know what I'm wondering?
What?
Since you play the 4 Urza's Towers, of course, because also of the synergy with Planar Nexus, which artwork did you pick for the tower?
I picked.
Don't tell me like 8th edition or something.
I have Antiquities copies. I had one of each Antiquities art. All 4 seasons.
Okay.
I am a stickler for aesthetics. I like my pretty cards, so I like to have aesthetically pleasing decks. Yeah, so
you know what would be cool if you actually switch the artwork between games. Every single game you got a different artwork. That way, oh my god, that's actually insane. You could do that, and then your opponent thinks, "Oh no, actually no, that works." Of course, you play 4 seasons. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah, I play one of each of the 4 seasons.
I was just wondering, like, if you have a card that has a one-off in your deck, but it has different artwork, and you switch out the artwork between games, and your opponent doesn't notice, then in the second game, if they see it again, they will think, "Oh, he's playing at least 2 copies of these." And, like, yeah, this is way too deep now.
Are you allowed to just like start de-sleeving and like re-sleeving cards like from a separate deck box face down, like in a match? Like, don't worry about it; it's the same card. Like, are you allowed to do that?
That is suspicious, but I think the judge would look at you
funny.
I
would call a judge so fast, but like, are you allowed to?
I think you would probably be allowed to.
I think we'd be allowed to, but then you have to like flip it face up and like show your opponent that you're not cheating. Like, I don't think a judge would be like, "Oh yeah, you can just do it to bluff," and then the judge would confirm. I think the judge would like probably make you flip the cards face up and be like, "See, they're the same card," and then make you put one back in your bag or something. But they'd probably also ask like, "Why are you wasting my time?"
Yeah. Why are you doing this? Is probably the first question.
Yeah.
Then you get,
so the one thing I always wanted
stalling.
to do was to have my deck box not as a traditional deck box, but as a binder. So when it goes to sideboarding, you pull out your binder and you browse the binder, and you have like cards on all different pages, and you're like, "Oh, this one," and then you browse for the next page. "Oh, and this one and this one." Your opponent's like, "You can't sideboard from your entire binder." Like, no, just like, it's fine.
Cards.
Judge comes over, looks at it. No, it's fine. I mean, I know because Kai also has played Magic in Japan. Technically, you're supposed to also present the 15 cards in your sideboard at the beginning of the match, which outside of Japan, nobody really does. Have you guys ever done that?
Yeah, I do that.
I was so close to saying I think Max is the kind of player who might actually have done that.
I mean, I've had Japanese opponents that I've encountered while traveling, and they requested that. I'm like, yes, that's fine. So I've not done it like intentionally, but I've had like a Japanese opponent do that. I'm like, yeah, I'll oblige. Seems polite enough.
Yeah, like, dude, trust me, like, not even, like, the Japanese also don't know why they're doing it. It's just because everyone does it in Japan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's, like, really wild. Yeah, because
they don't know because you have to present the sideboard. They just do it because they've seen somebody else do it.
Yeah,
well, your sideboards no longer have to be 15 cards. That's the thing.
I mean, yeah, but it's about, like, not being 16, 17, 18 or something.
I mean,
yeah, I guess.
If you're cheating, pull out 15 cards.
Yeah, and what about the other 3? They're still in your deck box. They can see, like, I guess
Those
you
are
also
tokens.
have to show
Don't
your
worry about
empty deck box. See, now that's how you win tournaments. I see, I understand.
No. The other ones, that's my companion.
Tune in for the secret podcast episode.
Yeah, you show them your 15 cards, and you have your companion somewhere else. There you go. Get 16.
I got deck checked 3 rounds in a row in Vintage. We're good.
Ooh, wow. I had a funny deck check story. I got deck checked in round 10 of the Legacy main. So it turns out that Melee misimported the text file I copied over and put in Beseiju who shelters all instead of Beseiju who endures.
Oh no.
Pretty much the same, right?
No, got deck check round 10. The judge said, "Hey, you're good to go." And I was like, okay, I didn't really think much of it because I hadn't looked at my deck list. But in the semifinals on camera against Ari, he like looked at my deck list and was like, he parsed it immediately as like Beseiju who endures. Looked back, says, "That doesn't say Beseiju who endures, Judge. What is going on here?" And I was just like, well, this could end very badly. And it turned out that the judge staff was just like, yeah, there's no way that's the correct card. So they just fixed it without incident. So
It's also interesting you say that because at least a couple of years ago, the way I knew it to be handled is if you had a deck check and you got you got a check mark, everything is fine, even if there's a mistake. If they find a mistake later on, let's say during the top 8, then you don't get penalized for it because the judge already like gave it the green check mark basically. And I don't know if it's still the case, but back then it used to work like that.
Yeah, maybe, but like I've definitely been in spots where like a deck reg error like that is auto game loss, but the head judge decided that there was no way a reasonable person would determine that wasn't the intention, and that it made sense that it was the other Boseiju, and then just de-escalated and issued a warning. So,
oh man,
uncomfortable command.
But if you showed me like Boseiju who shelled us all, like I'll be like, oh man, like this is really smart. He wants Kozak's command to really resolve. Yeah. Oh man, this guy's really serious about Kozak's command, dude. I would totally buy that.
I mean, you can also use like you can use Candelabra to use it twice to like cast 2 uncomfortable Kozak's in a single turn.
Exactly.
Please, dude, stop. No.
That's why it's there. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Kevin, are you like overall really happy with the list? Was there anything else that came up during the tournament that made you or your team feel like maybe we should adjust?
So I think we very much coming tournament knew we broke it, and that we have definitely determined by our results that we broke it. Sorry to
interrupt you there. You broke it. You
broke
go
the
as far
format.
as I was going to say you would go as far as to say you broke Legacy right now.
I would agree.
Yeah,
that's a fair assessment.
Please say yes, because that's a pretty good caption for anything about the podcast episode.
So I was like kind of saying it slightly facetiously earlier, where I was just like, people asked, "Oh, what are you bringing?" I said, "Oh, the team broke it. I'm not going to leak and stuff like that." There's a few called shots and DMs were just like, someone's like, "Oh yeah, what deck are you playing?" I said, "I broke it, no leaky," and they kind of asked what it was. I was like, "No comment. I'm not saying anything." I did get a little bit of shit for that, but coming in after, or we had the deck as a whole, with let's say a lot of suboptimal lists and a lot of kind of random players picking it up, had a 62, 63 win rate against the field, and internally we had a 77% win rate. Was just insane. So yeah, I will. You can quote me on this. Say we did break Legacy for this event.
But okay, and probably like this is like something probably like most of our listeners want to know is, do they all have to buy one copy of Candelabra of Taunos now?
Oh no. So think about the candlestick. Okay, so the thing about the candlestick is that a lot of times in testing there is an Urza Saga trigger going off with keys in play, and then we were all just like joking, just like, I'll go down to WotC right now and get a Mana Vault Legal and Legacy, because we were very much in need of just any random artifact you could find of Urza Saga that made mana. We wrote off Candlestick initially because the mana base was not just Cloud Post. Like this mana base ends up looking a lot like Cloud Post, where your land enters untapped. So, but when you're playing Cloud Post, Candlestick is no longer just like an oddity that maybe makes 1 mana through Ancient Tomb. If you let's say go like, let's say you find enough Saga on turn 3 and have like a Tower Nexus or Workshop in play, and then play a third Urza's land, like any random Urza's land, your 3 lands tap for 7, and then your Candlestick taps for 4. You get to the point where Candle makes more mana than Key plus Monolith, and then your Candle can also just be keyed and also just make more mana than Key plus Monolith. And that was what we discovered. And then especially was kind of an extension of the point made previously, is the way this deck won was not just resolving 4-drops, it's resolving 4-drops with boatloads of mana to make sure those 4-drops were able to parlay them into a win. And Candlestick was a kind of important role player or flex slot from that. But if you want to spend the $800 elsewhere, you definitely don't need to lock in a Candlestick.
But you're basically saying it provides an extra boost. So if you can go there, but it's not like the deck completely crumbles without access to Candelabra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we decided to add 1 copy like Tuesday before the event. I think that was fun. I was like, I'm not going to turn down an opportunity to play a Candlestick in my deck. That's kind of sweet.
See, that's the true reason, right? I feel like no, but it's actually it looks kind of sick. I've seen some of the footage. I didn't really get to watch all of it, but I don't know. Like the way you've built this, especially with Urza's Workshop, kind of want to play it. Like also the workshop is worth a lot of money now, right?
Yeah,
at least on Magic Online.
I think it may have got Max closer to another piece of power. I was this connection appreciating.
You got me 1/10 of a Mox Pearl. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
How many workshops do you have?
4. 0 now.
Okay.
I think it went from like 15 ticks to like 60.
Yeah, something like that. Wow. I basically just turned 50 profit per. So yeah, it was Very nice of you to do that.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Happy to help.
Sharing the money.
I think like
Perfect.
Workshop is like it taps for 4 more than it doesn't. Especially in like the slower matchups where especially under a null rod, you're just like, I will cast a Kozilek's command for X equals 15, and there's nothing your rod can do. And it's insane. And also just like the one other thing that's kind of baked into this mana base is Planar Nexus making colored mana means we can actually have real sideboard cards.
Ooh, okay. Let me check what you got there.
Such as the activated ability of a green land you have.
You can cast Fairy Markup. Okay.
Oh yeah.
And Beseechel and Dismember.
Yeah. Oh, and so mainly the card is Portable Hole and Beseju's. Portable Hole is just an artifact you can wish for with Karn, and then use that to like nug a Null Rod, collect a Roof, Deafening Silence, or whatever. And then Beseju was, I think, my personal innovation that I played over other members of my team, because I liked how it lined up against a lot of post-board spots.
Yeah, that's such a good shout. Like, reading your list, I was like, oh my god, yeah, if I was, hiding this deck was a good call. Because if I had seen this list, I would have played it. Like, it plugs all the holes of the deck. Like, the fact that you have Besages in the board, you bring it in against your tempo matchups, and if they're wastelanding you, it's more land drops. If they're null rodding you, it blows up the rod. Either way, it's fantastic.
Exactly. And the one kind of inconvenient thing, like this, my list is, I completely punted the Storm matchup. My Doomsday matchup's not very good. And I'm also kind of weak against Karn Mirrors. My plan on the Karn Mirror is to Karn plus attack, or make some constructs and just do construct beatdown. There's some other sideboard decisions. Some people on my team played Static Prison as a function, just a 1 mana O-ring for Karn. But I didn't play that mainly because having a triggered ability to try to answer null rods against piles of consign to memory I don't think was a very good idea. But Beseju, can't force it, can't thought seize it, cannot consign it. And then, especially if I get wastelanded, like having 22 lands in my board in my deck post board against wasteland was like totally serviceable.
Also, against Doomsday, where you said you gave up some grounds. As a Doomsday player, I have lost to unexpected Besejus.
Yes.
More times than I would care to admit.
Happens every time.
Yeah, I had an absolutely crackhead sideboard plan against Doomsday. So my plan against Doomsday was literally cut all 4 Karns, cut a Voltaic Key, and cut the Basalt Monolith. Bring in 3 Besejus, bring in the Dismember, and bring in the additional Pithing Needle.
That's disgusting.
Mainly, I found that the Doomsday matchup was like they're roughly 1 turn faster than you. So if you just simply have any card that can mize their pile and buy 1 turn, it's generally game winning. Because
it's basically like the classic, Needle on Street Wraith or Edge of Autumn or something.
I won my round 5 match on a Molder 3 by needling Edge of Autumn.
Oh wow.
Okay, the Doomsday player must feel terrible because of if you're on a mulligan to 3 and that's how they lose. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah. So the thing about like the Doomsday matchup is an astute Doomsday opponent will never really go to 0 cards in library unless they have an answer, because Kozilek's command says target player draws a card. So they can absolutely just get decked in response. So most Doomsday players, they kind of have to go for a 2 Oracle pile. So they have to go for have a fetch on a hand, go draw a step, cycler, fetch for 1 land out of your hand, land out of the pile, and then cast Oracle with 2 cards in hand. 2 cards in deck, and then cast a second Oracle with 1 card or 0 cards.
Yeah, the other way to do it is to bank an extra cycler. So you cast Oracle with 1 card left in library, cycler still in hand.
Oh yeah. And
then if they remove your creature, you cycle. If they Kozilek's command you, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, it asks a lot of the Doomsday player to when do you do all those things?
So because of that, since it's kind of hard for them to set up that line, especially with they have to kind of go for Doomsday fairly quickly because you can just kill them. Is Dismember is usually time walk, and Beseju reading shuffle targets player's library or just Mize Sinkhole is very relevant. It's much better than the Karns in the matchup. And then Pithing Needle is pretty much exclusively for naming cyclers. And if I look at the Doomsday pile and see that both Street Wraiths and both Edge of Autumns are in the pile, then you start naming fetch lands. Which is it's a weird matchup.
It is it is also a very fast matchup. As I think we can all agree that Legacy is the fastest it's ever been almost.
Yes.
So like a lot of the games like I watched on coverage, and like my own game experience like in the last couple of like weeks and months is also that like it is a lot of the times like you're like in a racing situation, and whoever can like maybe stop your opponent just slightly, right? Like the dismember on the Oracle is not game over, but it gives you a lot of time, maybe like the one turn you need, maybe.
Yeah, I think it buys exactly one turn, and then if I'm playing a broken combo deck, and my opponent's playing a broken combo deck, if I'm able to steal one turn, that can swing the entire game.
Yeah, dude.
What would you say? Like, you obviously did a lot of testing on this deck. What are the matchups you don't want to face? Like, of the, let's say, 15 most common decks in Legacy, like, what do you want to stay away from?
Yeah, the worst matchup in the format is Stifle Knot, surprisingly, which is kind of funny.
Is it really surprising?
No. Well, they have random hate permanents against you. Their hate permanents also make their clock really fast, and they have 3 to 4 main deck copies of Consign to Memory. Other matchups you don't really want to see. The Elves Nadu deck, the Nadu 4 Elves deck, is not a great matchup because they have 9 main deck copies of Collector Roof, and also have a combo they can execute on turn 2 at the earliest. Breakfast is a slightly better matchup, but it's still slightly unfavored. But then Doomsday and Storm, just the combo decks that go under you, are the ones that are really hurt. Especially Ant with Thoughtseize is slightly better against you because they can take your Karns and your Vexing Baubles. But in those matchups, you are largely resigned to your fate, and you see to hope that your Karn or your Vexing Bauble does enough for them to not kill you.
Yeah. I think like the data also showed that Jeskai control is very good against your deck, but the thing is like that Jeskai control sucks against everything else.
Yes.
So,
I know some people who are going to bring Jeskai control to Prague next week, and I've been trying to talk them out of it, but you know how Jeskai players are like.
Yes. Oh, I know. Sorry. Yeah, I thought you only wanted me to talk about real decks that are good against Forge.
Dude.
No, like, dude,
you want to replace Callum as a permanent host?
Yeah,
perfect.
No, you're very welcome here too, because like this podcast hates Jeskai control. So
we're gonna forward you the contract actually.
I'm in. I'll come shitpost every other week. It sounds like a good time.
It sounds good. Yeah, that's basically everyday journal the podcast.
Let me ask you like another question though. Like if there was not a Mystic Forge deck like this Mystic Forge deck you came up with, like do you have a secondary like go-to deck or like a plan B sort of thing?
Yeah, so I have
for
like
Legacy.
I have a pretty wide range in the format. I've pretty much played every non-Chalice of the Void, non-Tabernacle deck at some point over the past decade.
Oh shit.
But the deck I was brought last year and wanted to bring again was Red Painter.
So you can replace Callum.
Yeah. So I mean, like, well, like,
true.
It's like mono red featuring Chaos Defiler. And
playing the Agatha Soul Cauldrons or not? Because Callum always says he doesn't like them, but every time I see a good painter list,
it's okay to be wrong on the Agatha Soul Cauldron.
Well, you're supposed to be wrong at times if you want to join this podcast. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense if you always like spit the truth. But you'll get used to it.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's the thing is if I have not been in the spotlight for that long, so that the limited takes that people have seen are generally my good ones. My bad ones haven't come to the surface yet.
I will get to that in a moment.
Oh no. Okay. Yeah, so I really enjoy playing Painter. It's a deck that kind of looks mopey on paper and gets absolutely goldfish sometimes, but I think it has the most play and is the most complex deck in the format. It has the most moves and can really sneak out a lot of kind of impressive wins from pretty losing positions. And yeah, so I played a lot of Painter last year because I have access to most of the format and just play whatever has the best vibes. And Painter has very, very good vibes, and that's what I was going to. That was going to be my contribution to testing initially, was to be the Painter player to jam internal games against before we realized that we had a monster on our hands.
Dude, I really love how you're selling the Mystic Forge deck. Do you think this deck is gonna? I think we already talked about it, right? Do you think that Flashraker is the one to be touched? Is that gonna come along with also changes to, let's say, the deck we haven't talked about all podcast now, which used to be the talk of the town for a month? That is blue-black, well, with either Reanimator or Tempo. Didn't really have the best showing, right? I'm looking at the win rate now.
I think it had like 50,
slightly over 50%.
Yeah, I think it's being 53%.
Actually, that's pretty good.
Well, when you were the most targeted deck, I think it's pretty serviceable. But it got absolutely eaten alive by Forge. I went 5-0, 10-0 in the Frog Reanimator matchup on the weekend. So I think Frog is just an absolutely absurd card. And I think that the decks were largely winning because Frog existed. And if they did not have a Frog and we still had that reputation as the best deck, they would be winning like very far fewer games of Magic.
But is that still the number one thing that Wizards should be looking into? I mean, obviously you don't want your deck to be banned, right? But on the other hand, the way you're selling it, it almost needs to be banned unless the format adjusts like pretty strongly.
Yeah. So let's put out there. I think Vexing Bauble is one of the most egregiously designed Magic cards I've ever seen over the past decade. And that includes, I'm saying like that is worse. It's a worse design than Oko. Like the only card I think it was like a previous contention for the worst design card in Legacy was Treasure Cruise. But since then, I think
Underworld
it is.
Breach?
Okay, Underworld Breach was definitely a bad idea. But I think,
I mean,
okay. I think Vexing Bubble may somehow be worse than Luris. Mainly,
is it really?
No. So I'm not saying that it's like in a vacuum. It is, but Luris was something new that was like probably very broken. So it was at least something that was kind of outside the bounds of the format that it was determined to be way too good. Vexing Bauble was just so obviously broken with how it interacted with like core tenets of Legacy that it really should never have seen the light of day. And in that, Luris was a weird card that we'd never seen a design like that before. Came into Delver and was a card advantage engine and would overwhelm people, and that was obviously too good. Vexing Bauble, you look at it and you're just like, is turning Force of Will off in Legacy, where you have a bunch of potential turn one combo decks that are only they're only like acceptable in the format because Force of Will and other things exist. Is that really a good idea to have? Is it really a good idea to print a colorless artifact that invalidates the like kind of stopgap of the format and keeps us all from like living in turn one combo hell? And then also randomly talk about my round 7. I kind of won the matchup lottery in round 7 because I got paired into an 8-cast player. And there was Vexing Bauble.
I can see where this is going.
So
nobody's playing 8-cast these days anymore, are they?
Well, because Vexing Bauble single-handedly invalidates the deck. It's playing like 16 0-mana artifacts.
Yeah.
So the only reason it was ever good in the first place is you could run out your zeros and cast a Kappa Cannon here, or start recurring zeros with Emery to draw cards. But like, Vexing Bauble just means the deck just does not function. Like
it's so funny. Yeah. It's so funny. You say Kappa Cannoneer. I remember when there was a time, like a year or two ago, or even 3, like time flies, where we felt like, oh, dude, this card is so annoying and we can't deal with it and deals so much damage. And you look at like Legacy right now, and you're just like, lol, stupid turtle, attack, pass the turn. What are you gonna do?
Turtle too slow.
The turtle
is too slow.
Kappa Cannoneer is a miserable card. Just the supporting cast is really weak now.
Yes,
that's true. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
You can try the cast too, Max.
Yeah. In my match against Acast, I lost a die roll. He went Ottawa go. I went land pedal bauble. And he looked at his hand, just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do from here. Played a Chalice on 1, which is generally a pretty good card against Forge. And so I just went jam turn 2 Karn plus on your Chalice go, and the game was just simply over. Just like
oh no,
it wasn't like definitely the most loved archetype in the format, but is an archetype that was, I think, very suitable for Legacy power levels. Got completely invalidated by this random 1-mana artifact from a modern set.
You know, I thought of one piece of good that Vexing Bauble has done. It took me a while. I was racking my brain. People are so against non-bows existing. Like, how can you play Rest in Peace in your Snapcaster Mage deck or stuff like that? Like, why are you playing Rest in Peace? I'm like, well, because if my opponent's dredge deck doesn't function, it's okay that my Snapcaster Mage can't flashback spells. Like, but the fact that we're playing Vexing Bauble in these like 0-drop decks or Force of Will decks, people are finally coming around to, oh yeah, a non-bow is okay. You get to choose the order in which you cast your spells, and you get to choose whether or not to cast your spells. Like, you have autonomy over how you cast spells. And I think with Vexing Bauble, people are starting to finally realize that. Yeah.
I think to your point, and in my one vintage feature match in round 2, my opponent conceded on the spot when I went Dak Fade and steal your Vexing Bauble. Is this being able to control when the Vexing Bauble leaves play just makes the card so unfair. Like, it's not a symmetrical effect. that my opponent was like, I'm willing to play the game on a low mulligan, but I have Vexing Bauble in play, but if you steal the bauble, the game ends on the spot.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a horrendous game. Like, he mulled the 4, had a bauble, Force Will backup. My hand didn't work. He balanced me for my entire hand. I was able to dig through time into DAC plus land, and then just stole his bauble, and he just scooped.
Yeah, Molo plus balance is a combo.
Yes. Yeah. My hand was bad, but like, it was just a interesting spot where I also had a similar conversation with Andreas where like people like to make the comparison of Vexing Bauble to Defense Grid, and like they're not the same card at all. Bauble is just infinite upside compared to Defense Grid, and that like I definitely played against show and tell players where they just have Ancient Tomb land and force a will me through Defense Grid on 2, and it works just fine. You have to play a lot weaker mana base because you want to, say, produce 2 mana on turn 1 to deploy your Defense Grid. Defense Grid ends up being a little bit bad if you can't get out of the way. And let's say I'm playing against Naughty with Force Will and I want to interact with their combo on their turn. I have to play 4 mana for my Dismember, and it's bad. And then a part where you also just randomly hose like Rhinos. Like, I think the round 11 feature match was Forge versus Rhinos. And everyone was just like asking, like, how does a Rhinos player find himself with this record when there's just Vexing Bauble as random decks?
Yeah, that's Will Harshit's actually finishing top 16 with Cascade Crash.
That's impressive. Like, I really don't know how you're supposed to do that when you had 15 copies of Vexing Bauble in top 8 and like a bunch of other ones.
Let me check. He's got like Brazen Borrower. What else is there? Brazen Borrower.
Yeah. Hope your opponent misses the trigger.
True. I did get bauble checked a few times over the weekend.
Same.
Yeah.
And I guess there's one of Minsk and Boo. Dude, whenever I play against the stack, they get the turn 1 Minsk and Boo, and then they put like a smiley face in chat and say sorry. And I'm like, dude, I wish you hadn't done either of that.
No, I don't know. Like, I think recently online, when people at turn 1 Minsk and Boo, I just like smile back and then kill them on turn 2. That's how absurd this Forge deck is.
So broken.
Yeah.
Kevin, do you have like your own place where you put out content? Is there anywhere where people can see or read a detailed review of your entire tournament?
So I don't have my own personal blog. I'm not really a big YouTuber, but I enjoy coming on and chatting with other people whenever possible. I'm doing a tournament write-up that I think I'm going to publish
on minmaxblog.com.
Maybe. It depends.
You're more than welcome to, but if you can find a mainstream site, please do.
Yeah, I think I'm going to put it on the Legacy of the North website to start with, nice. And then whoever wants to collaborate on that will be able to CC it or copy it. I'm still going to write that, but also right now I'm preparing a little article on my full like take on bans, where I'm probably going to be slightly less inflammatory on describing how egregious of a design Bauble was and giving a more level-headed take about why I think it should leave the format and why that I think the Forge deck will be far fairer if it isn't playing like 4 1-mana colorless Hymn to Tarax.
What are the odds? What do you think? Like half a year from now, is Vexing Bauble still going to be legal in Legacy?
No.
I mean, it's not about should, but whether you think they will actually ban it by the next 6 months.
I think that they will, mainly because if they don't, the entire format will be Mystic Forge. It will be oops all spells, and it will be turn 1 combo decks that only exist because people have somehow have effectively hated Force Will out of the Legacy format.
Mm-hmm.
So I think WotC may go after something like the One Ring. That one would make sense. It definitely would nerf the power of the Forge deck, but your Force check decks would still exist. But I think the one mistake that people may make was going after Glaring Fleshraker. So my opinion on going after Glaring Fleshraker is that when Storm was busted in 2011, you didn't ban Tendrils of Agony. You banned Mystical Tutor. You banned the Enabler, which made the deck good. Glaring Fleshraker is not the card that necessarily makes the Forge deck broken. It is simply a convenient win condition that only gets across the finish line once the rest of the combo is already assembled.
And when you look at the card in a vacuum, it doesn't look like the kind of card that gets banned in Legacy, right?
Can I push back a little bit on that?
Yeah.
So the reason why I like Fleshraker as a potential ban target for both Forge and Eldrazi, but also mostly Eldrazi, is I think that one of the things that it getting Flush Trigger out lets you do, or lets opponents do, is play hate cards to beat you. Because oftentimes the Flush Trigger operates like orthogonal or like fast, or like lets you be faster than the hate cards are. And so, like, against Eldrazi, you play your Harbinger of the Seas or whatever. Like the Flush Trigger is what allows the Eldrazi deck to still function. Or against you, like you're null rotted, but you're still casting spells and your Flush Trigger is still generating you mana. I think that the Flush Trigger allows those decks to beat hate cards in a way that it wouldn't be able to do without it. Yeah. And so by banning Flush Trigger, you can choose to beat the deck with particular cards if you want to.
Yeah. So I would say that most of the ire on that front is Kozilek's command. Mainly because if in a situation where I'm locked under a null rod, like going Flush Trigger, if I actually want to win from there, you do need to cast 20 odd spells. It definitely gets broken if there's two of them, but it is a card I definitely put back the most on mulligans because it is not good on its own and is definitely a combination of other cards. Kozilek Fin, on the other hand, is a single-handedly win the game. So definitely, Eldrazi is much easier to hate out with Blood Moon than Forge, but I think the existence of Kozilek's command also making spawns and make sure they have colorless mana is probably a much more. I think it's a much better target in my opinion. Also, the flexibility of Kozilek's command is just absolutely just I think beyond the pale for, but
yeah, that's
maybe fine.
I guess another thing I see about Flush Trigger, particularly out of Forge, is if Flush Trigger is not in the format, then you're allowed to cut your spot removal a lot more readily when you're doing your sideboarding. But in order, like feeling forced to leave in some number of like Swords to Plowshares or whatever, just so that you don't have to force a Flush Trigger if one enters, you're not like screwed, is a pretty big hindrance on the deck's sideboarding to fight Forge.
Yeah, true. I mean,
but anyway, like we'll see what they decide. I can see your arguments.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's super clear cut.
Yeah,
like,
I don't think it's...
Would you play Kozilek's command if it was a sorcery?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then the card's truly too good.
Yeah.
Somebody who's listening to this is like, dude, I told you should have made it a sorcery.
I should play it in Vintage to grow my other Goyf.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah. I see. Dude, the rare case where you actually get what's it called? Kindred, Tribal, something.
Yeah. This may sound a little insane, but I'd almost play Kozilek's command if it was triple Wingding instead of double Wingding.
Oh, no.
I mean, in your mana base, absolutely. I think it would be harder for the like Tomb City base, but the way that you built it.
Oh yeah, I mean the key thing is you want like X equals 1 on turn 2 to interact with Entomb Reanimate is very important. So like I can make 4 mana on turn 2, so I would still play triple Wingding.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Pretty broken.
Yeah. Also, I wonder what Kozilek's command that I was like trying to not get a judge call over. It is target player, so if you ever ring protect yourself, you can no longer give yourself spawns or scry.
Although you can go off pretty hard with the ring trigger on the stack.
I've done that, yeah.
Yeah. Like protection trigger on the stack, I'll draw a card. Okay, I'll untap my ring, draw more, blah, 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 blah. You can still go pretty hard.
You can still go. It's just like that's just like a lurking rules interaction that looks very bad on paper if you have to call a judge on yourself.
Oh, yeah. On Magic Online, it's really funny when you see new Forge players because they have a bunch of mana floating and they're paused for a really long time. And you know what they're trying to do is they're trying to Kozilek's command themselves under ring protection, and they can't. And they're trying to figure out like, is Moto bugged? What's going on? Why can't I do this? And eventually they're like, question mark, and then I just type in chat like, you can't target yourself because you have protection.
Yes.
I usually type like I hacked Magic Online. You please concede. Otherwise, I will delete your connection.
That's why you get so many account spans, Julian.
Oh yeah, true. That's why I'm at Julian 23 now. That one has lasted for quite a while actually.
You learned your lesson.
23.
Yeah. Guys, should we call it a day here? We're slightly over the 2-hour mark. I'm still feeling last night's wine from my company.
I need to know Kelvin's best play and worst play.
Oh yeah. God.
Oh. But the best play we already heard about, right? Was that the potential double fireball one against crop rotation?
Yeah, so it didn't end up having it. I had like a lot of pretty interesting interactions. So there's the Doomsday Mulligan to 3. I had a ring on 5 against Cloud Post. I was at 6 life. I drew to 6 cards, and if I need to hit exactly double, I would double Kozilek's Command, or I would just re-ring, so I didn't die to my ring. So I hit my double Kozilek's Command. I went to my opponent's upkeep, floated 40 mana with Candlestick and Keys, and then had the double Kozilek's Command just in case he had the crop rotation in order to fireball him in his upkeep through his own ring protection. I think my best play, it sadly was not a camera match, but it was in the quarterfinals against Dominic Vernazza on Blue Black Reanimator. So my game 1 was I had a 6-card hand, and it was Tower, Nexus, Bauble, One Ring, so that game ended very quickly. Game 2, I resolved a Saga trigger. So he had a troll in his graveyard. So I was like thinking, and I went for Vexing Bauble instead of Silent Gravestone because I thought I intuited that he would have reanimated the troll if he had it, and he decided not to. And so I went for Vexing Bauble to protect against Forceful Will. So it turned out the reasoning was that he had to reanimate, but wanted to hold up Consign to Memory, and his reanimation spell was exactly Animate Dead. So then I was immediately under the gun against the troll. So I got attacked a couple times, and then I made a Kozilek's Command. I was at 4 life with a Bowmaster in play. But Kozilek's Command X equals 9 with an Ancient Tomb untapped, like Desperation, like I need to find something. He hardcasted Daze, and I was like, oh shit. So I tap my Ancient Tomb, go to 2, Kozilek's Command, draw my card, so look at 9 cards, stack my deck, take the Bowmaster ping, go to 1. So luckily, I did the way like we sideboard the blue black matchup is we cut all the Karns, bring in the good Karn targets and the graveyard hate. So
I like that.
My stack was pretty good. So my stack was Mystic Forge, Fleshraker, Key, and Snaring Bridge was what I put back on top of my library. And since I had 9 spawns and a 1 mana floating from my Ancient Tomb after the days, I was like pretty easily able to go cast draw Mystic Forge from the command, go to 1, cast Fleshraker off the top, cast Key off the top, cast Key off the top, cast Key off the top, cast Ensnaring Bridge with no cards in hand, go.
Oh man, beautiful.
And then eventually he played a Psychic Frog.
And that happened in the backup feature match. There was no footage of that.
It was not even the backup feature match. It was like on the kitty table. So like there were two tables being filmed, and there was another table feature match area for the other quarterfinals match. So it was footage did not exist, but I thought it was
it
exists
pretty
now
sweet. On this podcast, kind of.
Yeah. And then I just sat there at a Forge and Play at a Mr. Fleshraker. I was like, I'm dead to a lot of things. I'm dead to a second Brazen Borrower. Because I was like in a pretty precarious situation because he had like a Petty Theft on my Bauble plus Force of Will, a ring. So I was at one life, and then I was dead to his second Bowmaster. I was dead to his second Brazen Bar to bounce my Ensnaring Bridge. And I was also dead to removal plus reanimate. I would kill my own Bowmaster, reanimate, and ping you from 1 because I did not have a Silent Gravestone in play because I went for a Vexing Bauble off my Saga trigger instead. And then eventually I was just like, draw, and I couldn't clear any bricks on top of Mystic Forge either because I was at 1 life, so I just like was resigned to my fate whether I could find enough things to ping him to death through a Steering Bridge before he could find an answer. And luckily I found like the next 3 or 4 turns found a second Fleshraker plus some pingers to shoot him down, and was able to squeak that one out.
This deck, dudes, I've played against it a couple of times, and this kind of stuff feels like it happens every other game almost. And it's just disgusting because you do feel like, okay, I got some play here, and let's pass to them. Like, I just need to survive one more. Oh shit, there we go again. And
Okay. Worst play. So my worst play was game 3 of the finals on camera.
Oh, perfect time to pick for your worst player, right?
Yeah. So my game 1 was was very interesting. I made 12 mana on turn 2, cast a Kozilek's Command, and then Karn Lattice my opponent. He died. Game 2, I got Collect Roof on the draw, and then got my Kozilek's Command Consign, so I then died to Craterhoof quite quickly. Game 3, I kept a 7 that was it was a Saga Ancient Tomb Petal Karn the Great Crater Dismember hand. So it's pretty good card on 7. My opponent, kind of correctly, mulliganed to 4 looking for hate. And it turned out that his 4 lined up very well against my 7. So since I knew he had Deafening Silence in his sideboard and wanted to go turn 2 One Ring, I went Saga Petal. So if he went Deafening Silence, I could just play an Ancient Tomb and cast a One Ring on turn 2. And then figure that out. However, he does not have Deafening Silence. He has Upkeep, Force of Vigor, exile or destroy my Urza Saga and my Petal, when I only land in hand after that was Ancient Tomb. So on his turn, he went land Noble Hierarch, so he had one card left in hand. And so I made the read that the majority, I assumed that the card in his hand has to be a good one, so either had to be a land or a collector oof of some sort. But the odds would dictate that the majority of his collector oofs in situation are going to be Court of Calling or Green Sun Zenith and not the natural oof. So basically, while I wanted to attack his mana while he's down, and then fired off the Dismember on the Noble Hierarch, leaving him with one land, one card in hand. Maybe thinking because he couldn't have anything he could necessarily cast, because the majority of his oofs were going to be Green Sun Zenith. If he has to fight the Green Zenith to get a land, I had Kozilek's Command, so I can go exile your Dryad Arbor, draw a card. So my read was his last card was Green Sun Zenith, because that was like the most likely outcome for it to be. So then I go, play Ancient Tomb, go. And then he just goes, draw, no play, go.
Go.
And it turned out his last card in hand was exactly the one of Natural Collector Roof. And I got slightly punished for firing off the Dismember on the Noble Hierarch.
Okay.
So I made the slightly wrong read in that I think I made my logic was not great, mainly because I think the read I should have made was that the only way I lose the game is if he resolves Collector Oof, so I should have just held the Dismember in order to dismember the oof if he presents it, instead of trying to step on try to like kick him while he's down when he's mulliganed to 4 and had no mana in play. So
yeah.
But like I also was thinking I did also have a Forge in hand, so I had a lot of ways to beat a Collector Oof, and that like I had a bunch of mana and a Forge, so I could just chain off, especially because on a mull to 4 he would be unable to really present a lot of aggression. So I would have some time. And then eventually I was able to sneak over the finish line by fogging with Ring a few times, getting Ring protection so I could tap my Ancient Tombs for mana at 2 life, and then being able to find the Kozilek's Command to fireball him in one turn from 13 while locked under 4 copies of Collector Oof.
Dude, you're doing such a great job selling the deck. I'm playing Eternal Weekend in Prague next week, and I'm pretty committed to Painter, but if somebody is out there who's got this deck and might be willing to bring it to Prague. Actually, when you look at it, okay, Candelabra, yeah, that's a lot of money. I guess for Monolith was also a lot of money. But the rest, that's not like crazy expensive cards, right?
No, it brings on the
Wandering. Okay, 4
downtrend
copies of
because
the
people
Wandering.
think it's going to get banned in Modern, so it's getting less expensive.
It's like $50 something.
I feel like people have been talking about the Wandering getting banned in Modern for a year now. It's eventually going to happen, right?
Probably. I don't know.
$40. I think, okay, expensive, like Opal's like $100. Manifold Key is dirt cheap. Petal is randomly I don't know why Petal is $20, but apparently it's $20.
But I got those from Painter anyway.
Julian, leverage your clout, have someone lend you the deck.
If I was motivated enough. Like these days I hate borrowing decks. I like traveling there, having everything I need, not having to look for cards. And
yeah, I mean you can borrow my copy, just one condition.
Oh yeah, just send it by mail. Julian at everydayjournal.com.
Yeah, no, you gotta come pick it up in person.
That might actually be cheaper than buying it.
I mean, probably. I think like a playset of Grim Model is like $1,200.
I got the golden modern ones from the Kaibuda World Championship deck in Tokyo in 1999. That should work, right?
Yeah.
Can you alter those?
Yeah. If you fly me out to Prague, I'll black out the borders with a Sharpie and sign all of them for you. No problem.
Oh, that sounds like something.
Dude, I wonder like how many people are gonna like pack like 2 or 3 copies of Null Rod for this
the main deck.
Next weekend. Yeah, dude.
It's like the one thing is like
I'm so scared.
I think I had like a similar discussion with Andreas, but if you want to go deeper and check that out, but Null Rod on its own is not necessarily good enough, because without pressure, like the deck will just find their kill and kill you. Like I think so. You really need to be playing like a strategy that's like actually more akin to real like Delver of Secrets, like 3-drop on turn 1, and plus hate. You need your permission plus you need permission, or no, hate plus pressure, or like the deck will eventually find a kill.
Nethergoyf is still broken. is.
Yeah, Nethergreif. Everybody play 4 copies of Nethergreif. Here we go. Guys, I think we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much once again for joining us. Best of luck to... are there any big Legacy tournaments coming up or Vintage tournaments coming up in the US? After this Eternal weekend here?
Maybe. I'm in Southern California, so I can't really travel to all those tournament series in like the Midwest and stuff, so I don't pay that much attention.
California is weird, right? Or at least the West Coast in general. Like people always say, "Oh, it's so expensive to run events there because everybody's rich, so everything is expensive." So
also, things are really far away. Like, I don't think people realize this. Like, Kelvin and I are both West Coast. We're further away than like Madrid to Moscow.
Yeah, but he's like in Seattle.
It's a shorter flight to go from New York to London than Seattle to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but that's across the country, right? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Even like Seattle to LA is like a 3-hour flight.
Yeah.
But 3 hours is not much.
Right, but like when you compare, that's supposed to be air quotes close by. And so in order to get to tournaments, it's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like 4 hours is the cutoff for me where it's like a no longer a short flight, kind of. Yeah. Like 3 hours is still like, I don't know, that's Berlin to Madrid, basically.
Yeah, there are like a few tournament organizers that I've run into.
Actually less than that.
I will
anyway.
shout out. Yeah, so
I'm supposed to be like... Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. It's getting way too late for me now. We have to wrap this up.
Okay, no problem.
But I'm so happy that you guys found the time to join us, also on such short notice. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I don't really look forward to the enforgification of the form. By the way, in talking of that, isn't Elon Musk gonna actually buy Hasbro? I saw something about that while I was in Egypt.
Aren't you trying to wrap it up? That's another half hour discussion.
but then I remembered that. Because I wanted to bring it up. I don't know why. When we were talking about like, oh, this card. Actually, oh yeah, the Wandering. I thought like, I saw Elon Musk is gonna buy Wizards and then he's gonna ban the Wandering. But I'm having a lot of really weird dreams these days.
He wants to buy Hasbro because he's mad about D&D, which is a homebrew game anyway. Like, there's nothing to say. It's just stupid rich guy is making.
Oh, it wasn't about Magic.
It's what It's
the thing is, like, I don't really use Twitter anymore.
He's
like,
mad about D&D because
so I don't know.
He's mad that they stopped being racist. Like, that's all there is to it.
That sounds like him.
Yeah,
that sounds very much like him. Okay, I thought I missed some Musk Magic drama, which would be a reason to read up on it.
I think the extent of it is he just asked how much Hasbro costs on Twitter. So like, it's rich guy antics and like not much we can do. So.
Okay, so what if we... That's actually an interesting thought experiment. Maybe somewhere out there can do the math. All Magic cards combined on the secondary market, is that going to be worth more than Hasbro?
I believe so.
I think I saw something about like 4 to 5 billion for Hasbro, which I have no idea if that's true, but...
So if you want to like... I just kind of do like the napkin math. Let's just start with Alpha, probably the biggest chunk of it. So there are 1,100 Alpha Lotuses, and they cost like $50,000 a pop, right? Is that like a decent number?
Yeah,
like, there's definitely more expensive ones. So that's a single card with a market cap of $55 million. So if you kind of extrapolate that over 110,000 dual lands, like 1,100 of all the Alpha rares, like I think it gets closer to like 8 to 10 billion. I think the market cap of Hasbro, let's pull it up. I think it's in like the low single digit or mid to high single digits of billions. So I think that's also why Hasbro didn't really want to get rid of the reserve list, because the potential lawsuit that at least people will try to file would be bigger than the market cap of their company.
Yep.
Okay, I think with that's a good way to end the podcast. If you want to support our quest of buying Hasbro, you can support Everyday Eternal on Apple Podcasts by leaving a review, and Spotify, of course, or by joining us on patreon.com/everydayeternal. We already got some people on board on this very special quest, especially our Eternal Witness tier patrons: Franco Boli, Kane, Colin Garassi, Alex Crow, Tim Everett, Testicular, Sebastian Holager, Guillaume, Sean Dewey, Stephen Bush, Jim Monolith, Francis Kauper, Cassandra Davis, Rachel Scherer, Connor Clark, Tom Zischka, Benedikt Gruber, and Severin Schwarzhuber, by the way, many of whom we're going to see at Eternal Weekend Prague. And our top Grizzlebrand tier supporters: Evan Lazar, Tom Hepp, Harry Houdini, MTG, Ian Seefeld, Joe Brennan, and Colonoscopy. Thank you so much. Kelvin, Max, also thank you so much. By the way, Kelvin, when you go to the US, do you have to change your first name to Fahrenheit?
I do.
Or is it Fahrenheit?
I do.
Oh, that's a
No.
really bad joke, right?
That's bad. I mean, apparently with how apparently no one can read, I've been called Kevin a lot, and it's definitely getting to me.
Oh, it's annoying. I can
It's
see.
really
yeah.
I was Kevin Wallace on round 2 of coverage, and Star City Games also called me Kevin Wallace. So I just say it must be because I took no L's on the weekend, so I must be Kevin.
Ooh, I like it. That's a good one. Very good.
Okay, perfect pun. Perfect. Here we go. Okay, everybody, if you want to hear more of that, where can people find you on? So you said you don't have social media, but you got Legacy. No, you don't have YouTube,
Yeah,
but you got Legacy of the North.
You can find me on Twitter at KJWallace18. I'll be posting a little bit there. You can find me on Discord at KellyD73 if you want to chat. But I will be posting a tournament report and some opinions on bands on the Legacy of the North website. It's www.legacynorf.com.
Oh, really? NORF?
NORF,
Loving it.
Legacy North. That was
North,
the
Nice.
domain
North.
they got. Yeah.
Okay, with that, everybody, thank you so much, and see you again for the next episode in sometime, I guess, around Christmas. Dude, it's been another year. That's crazy. Everybody, see you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.